Hello and welcome to Cinema to the Letter. This episode is that new film known as Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. On Cinema to the Letter, we break down the very nature of cinema, letter by letter. For each episode of a season topic, we cover 6 films that fit as C for classic, I for indie, N for new, E for egregious, M for masterpiece, and A for atypical. Because who doesn't love an acronym, am I right? I am Thomas, and I am just praying to the seagulls. Can you hear my prayer?
Oh man. Hi, I'm Bryan, and I've got my culottes and my friendship bracelet, and ready to go on a banana boat, and it's gonna be a lot of me doing this voice. I want to prepare everyone for that.
And you know what? I think your perm just looks wonderful, Bryan. I love the way that your hair looks.
Oh god, this movie fucking rules.
But welcome everyone, yes, to the latest episode of our SNL Vehicle season, which we've been doing here. And we came across the N for new, and you know, we've talked about this many times in terms of with the new episodes of each season, the N for new episodes. There's always a thing about like, the modern state of cinema. In terms of like the comedy theatrical scene in particular, slim pickings a lot of the times, especially for something that kind of fits our season topic of SNL vehicles, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's we've kind of talked about it a little bit throughout the other episodes, but like I guess since something like Blues Brothers, like there have been a lot of these type of vehicles for just the assorted SNL cast members throughout the years, and as of late with like the newest sort of cast, it feels like there's not as many of these kind of movies. They still kind of happen occasionally, like, you know, I'm sure we'll talk about some of the other ones, but like, for example, like King of Staten Island, you know, the Pete Davidson, Judd Apatow movie. But yeah, there's just not been a lot of these as of late, which is kind of, you know, obviously it speaks to like, yeah, a lot of what we talk about generally of like the current state of the movie industry, but it's, I don't know, it's just kind of sad in general because like, as we'll talk about with this movie, like these are, when these kind of movies work, they really work like this, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know, it's interesting because like, when would you say is like the last really big like zeitgeisty hit of one of those? Because that's the big thing. Is like, I remember a time, Bryan, back in my day, where you know there would be at least one major hit comedy every summer, often starring an SNL person. Like, I mean, we'll mention this movie, I'm sure, as we continue, but the previous collaboration between our two stars / screenwriters, Bridesmaids, I remember being a massive comedy hit, and I remember seeing that in the theater, and just the charm of like being in an audience with a group of people who are just like laughing uproariously at a movie. It's a very rare thing to find these days, and that's such a fucking bummer. Because as much as like, you know, the problem is that a lot of people in the age of streaming will say like, oh, a comedy, there's not much reason to see that in a theater, it's not a big blockbuster, it's not, you know, some big Oscar movie that I really need to see in the big cinematic landscape. Who cares about seeing a comedy theatrically? A mindset that I just find so sad. That, like,
Yeah.
I love laughing with a bunch of fucking strangers at a good comedy. At the same time, I hate sitting in a theater where I'm not laughing, everyone else is laughing around me. I had that with Deadpool and Wolverine. One of the most miserable experiences I had watching a comedy in the theater, where a bunch of people were laughing around me, and I didn't want to be the asshole, Bryan, who was just like turning my head around, like, have you no shame? This is awful, bullshit slop. But I'm just sitting there like, ugh, I fucking hate my existence for this next like 2 hours.
Yeah, I feel like that is a sentiment though that is kind of like the further we get into like streaming and movies being on streaming and not released in theaters, I feel like it's something that a lot of people are starting to go back on, where they're actually like wait, no, we want to see these movies in theaters. The whole point of these movies is being in a room and laughing with other people. And so I feel like there is I feel like that was kind of the narrative for a while, right? It was like, yeah, these are comedies. You don't need to see them in a theater. You can watch them on your TV and it's fine. But there seems to be a kind of shift happening. And as far as looking at like what's the last kind of movie, I mean, it doesn't even star an SNL person, but like it's this kind of Apatow adjacent, like something like Blockers, which I really love.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know. Since then, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. Does anything come to like off the top of your head at all of like what is the last kind of like big SNL movie like this?
Yeah, SNL is a bit more difficult to parse because I think the other problem is just like a lot of these people kind of went to television. Like, there's a world where Bill Hader had like massive vehicles, and it would be like a perfect thing. But he went over to Barry, and we love Barry here, so there's no like shade against him doing that necessarily. But there's also, I'll just say, you're going to mention a movie near the end of this episode that I felt should have been that, and I remember seeing that movie theatrically to no audiences. Like, I remember seeing it in an audience with no one, like the weekend it came out. Yeah,
and I mean, the other one we talked about doing for this one was Palm Springs, the Andy Samberg one. That, it's a weird one because that movie was a COVID movie in a lot of ways, and it was released during COVID. Was it made during COVID? I don't know if it was actually made during COVID.
No, it wasn't, because it premiered at Sundance in 2020.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, yeah. And, we'll also be talking, speaking of which, that's pretty much the case with this movie we're covering today as well, was a COVID movie.
Yeah, but I think, with Palm Springs at least, like, that was a movie that went straight to streaming on Hulu and felt weird. It's a good movie, but, like, it kind of would have killed in a theater. It was distributed by Neon, which is kind of cool to see them do something like that. It's weird, and like obviously, yeah, like you've said, like Sandler has gone to Netflix. Will Ferrell has gone to like streaming, right? He does like the other one I thought it was like Eurovision,
but that was a Netflix movie, yeah. And also even like Cordially Invited, everyone's biggest favorite movie of the year so far.
Right, I forgot about that.
Currently, yeah. I guess you know what? I'll say this much actually. We're skipping over one that I know it also fits under IP and it's a bit different, but it does have, like, some SNL people are in it and stuff, and it is a comedy, I would argue. Barbie. Barbie's like first time in a while I felt that, in terms of like laughing in theater with a bunch of people, especially I saw that movie multiple times in theaters. Mm-hmm. And it was always just great laughing along with people with that. But that is like a rarity. That's like one of the few times in the 2020s I've gotten that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, like it's weird though because, I feel like there's two kind of things happened where, yeah, a lot of the people that we would have grown up with on SNL, people like Bill Hader and Will Ferrell and the star of our movie here, do a lot of streaming stuff, and that kind of becomes what they do, which kind of sucks. But also, in terms of like the newer SNL cast members, like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of priming up for their own vehicles. Like the only person that I think, besides Kyle Mooney, who we talked about and kind of has carved out his own weird little corner for himself, is someone like Bowen Yang, who isn't even getting like vehicles. Like, right, he's getting supporting performances and stuff, and he has kind of like been like, I'll do it myself then, and is like remaking The Wedding Banquet and stuff like that. So it's like, it feels like there's not a lot of like fostering of that like talent to get people to SNL vehicles anymore, which, I mean, that also gets into like the current state of like SNL cast members. I know you would love to see a Colin Jost vehicle or something.
Oh, so much. Him and Michael Shea, especially buddy cop movie, exactly what I want. Such talented, funny presences that I love seeing on SNL.
Oh God, yeah, but yeah, it just feels like those two things are kind of happening at the same time, and it has not allowed for a lot of these kinds of movies. But what I will kind of say is that the SNL kind of movie has been, I don't want to say replaced necessarily, but like there are still this newer kind of comedies out there. Like a movie I saw, I guess 2 years now, Jesus Christ, was Bottoms, which felt very much in that same kind of vein of like the SNL vehicles, same kind of comedic sensibility a little bit. And I saw that in a theater, and it was a great experience. Everyone was laughing, having a great time, and so, it's not that there aren't like comedies out there. We're getting a little bit more of them, but it's not the same as it used to be. Like you said, there used to be like 1 to 2 comedy hits a year, or every summer basically, and yeah, it's just not the same anymore. But there's still some stuff out there a little bit.
There's some inklings of hope, perhaps, yes. But let's talk a bit more about the particular SNL cast member that we'll be focusing on today. In terms of, she co-wrote this movie and she co-stars in this movie. One of the two titular characters, Kristen Wiig, who was in SNL from 2005 to 2012. One of those performers in SNL where I talked about this last time in reference to Kate McKinnon. But I think Kristen Wiig had a similar thing where she really lit up on SNL quite early. And I think after a certain point, I think around 2007 or 8, really became kind of like the star of SNL to a certain degree, in a way that I think is kind of a bummer, because what I like about Kristen Wiig is that she's very dedicated to anything you throw at her. In this, if you watch any of her sketches, whether she's like the main person or a supporting kind of garnish for the sketch, I think she's incredibly talented. But I think the trouble is that she kind of fell into the syndrome of not just the main character syndrome, but something else we've talked about of recurring character syndrome, where there's the Target Lady or Gilly or some of her other characters where they just use the fuck out of her all the time in those particular roles. And I think kind of pigeonhole her into those characters, which I think is a shame, because if you've seen any of her acting work that's been outside of SNL, she's very versatile as an actress, I think. And I think she's really, it's interesting how with Bridesmaids comes near the end of her tenure at SNL, and she leaves in 2012 after that movie is massively successful, and she gets nominated for a Best Original Screenplay Oscar.
Wait, really?
Yes,
that's crazy.
That and also of course the nomination for Melissa McCarthy for supporting actress also happened for that particular Oscars.
Man, we live in different times now. That's crazy. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, truly, yes. So that really blew her up in such a big way. Then after that, you would figure, she's going to do a bunch of vehicles, right? She's going to do a bunch of things. And weirdly, McCarthy gets more of that career after that, because then she's in stuff like Tammy and all those other fucking vehicles that she does with her husband. And no shade technically to Melissa McCarthy in terms of, I think she's also very talented, but she should never be in a movie that her husband directs again. I think they are probably a great couple in real life, but terrible creative partners on every conceivable level. They bring out the worst in each other. Yeah, it feels like she kind of took that, and Wiig just has done a bunch of weird stuff, and she's especially not even lead stuff, where she'll right after that was she was the love interest in Secret Life of Walter Mitty, and she was Steve Carell's love interest in Anchorman 2, but then the smaller indie stuff she's done Welcome to Me or Diary of a Teenage Girl, and just it felt like she just did a bunch of different stuff. And this is the first time she's written a movie since Bridesmaids with Barb and Star. And that's just weird to think about, that she kind of took that track. How do you feel about Wiig particularly?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a little bit about just my I didn't grow up watching SNL, and yet so many of these figures still permeated through. Will Ferrell obviously is up there with Adam Sandler as the most famous comedians of my time, I would say, while I was growing up. Wiig was kind of part of that. I knew who Kristen Wiig was. I knew I had seen the Target Lady clip somewhere, and I knew of her. She's incredibly famous, and yet, like you're saying, she doesn't have a lot of vehicles. Her career's kind of weird too. You mentioned that, but even seeing her pop up in something like Walk Hard, or Knocked Up or something like that. She does have a lot of these smaller roles where she is incredibly committed to the bit, which is part of her thing, as we'll talk about with this movie. But I guess where I would have seen her come up more is through her indie stuff that she was making, the Skeleton Twins. I mean, you mentioned Diary of a Teenage Girl. It's a fantastic movie, but then she just starts popping up in random movies. She's in The Martian, in a pretty small role,
along with everyone else,
along with all of Hollywood. Yeah. And then she really starts to do weird stuff Downsizing, which is an incredibly strange movie. She randomly shows up in Mother for like a minute, and you're like,
Yep.
what is happening here? Yeah, like for the past few years, it really has been like, yeah, she was in Where'd You Go, Bernadette, the Richard Linklater movie, and like, notably she was the villain in Wonder Woman 1984, which was, God, remember that movie? That was weird.
I think that's a movie that everyone's kind of like just put in the box,
Yeah.
put far away. Like a lot of the post like pandemic DC movies, just kind of like, no, we're gonna put that in a box and put it away. We're not gonna talk about
Yeah.
it.
But no, yeah, like she's a very weird performer. I mean, like she is so fucking funny. I mean, like I watched some of the SNL sketches that you put in that playlist that we'll probably put in the description somewhere. She's incredibly funny, but then right, you see her pop up in something, even her kind of like weird attempt at indie stuff with Skeleton Twins and Welcome to Me, which are not great movies, but you're kind of seeing her flex her muscles a little bit and kind of like get a bit more into dramatic acting, and you can see where like that becomes a kind of like a pipeline for a lot of these people, I think, right? Like they do their comedies and then they kind of do a bit more of dramatic acting, right? Like Sandler did that, Stiller kind of tried to do that a little bit, but like she just has a very weird career and is an actor. I just like, I don't know, when thinking about her career as we're talking about this, I always feel like she has this kind of unrealized like full potential of what she can be as a movie star. And obviously like it's a tough time now because we don't have really a lot of movie stars and the industry's very different and stuff like that, but I don't know, it just feels like she hasn't gotten the chance to do something really interesting other than this movie. And like I guess Ghostbusters, right, like that was kind of her big thing, and it didn't really go well for a lot of reasons we don't need to get into here, but
Well,
yeah,
what are you talking about? I thought that was universally acclaimed. Everyone loved it and was very normal about a fun movie.
everyone was so
I guess.
normal about that movie on the internet.
Right. She's also somebody where I agree with you. She has like done dramatic stuff, but also she doesn't feel like she turned her back away from comedy because she's willing to do like other comedic stuff at the same time. Like I agree with you. Yeah, like her early career is alive, that's just popping up in like fun little bits and pieces. Like I still remember seeing like the first time I really noticed her like outside of SNL was Knocked Up, where she has like such a small role playing like that assistant to Alan Tudyk in that scene where she's talking to Katherine Heigl and saying stuff just like, well, we can't legally say you can't have to lose weight, but maybe tighten, stuff like that. Just being so like passive aggressive and shitty to her. So funny. But then yeah, like stuff like Adventureland as well, where she's teamed up with Bill Hader, kind of like going back and forth. Or speaking to SNL, of course, MacGruber, where she is like very committed to the bits as well in a very silly way. And she didn't forget about that because like 10 years later she was in the MacGruber show, which I should mention I watched recently, the Peacock one-season MacGruber show that no one acknowledges exists, but I saw it.
I have not seen MacGruber.
The show or the film?
Neither.
Okay.
Is the show good? He asks, concerned.
I don't know. I'm not somebody who like loves MacGruber. MacGruber's become like this big cult hit in the last like 15 years or so that a lot of people swear by. I think that movie's very fun. I rewatched it recently. I think it's like very enjoyable, and I think Wiig in particular is quite fun with just certain bits. Like they establish her as like a musician, and MacGruber recruits her, just like, but what about your music career? And she just sings "It Can Wait," shit like that. Very funny. And then even in like the show, I think she's the most consistently fun thing about it. MacGruber is the show is definitely a thing that like this should have been a movie. Classic streaming problem of like it's 4 hours long, and it's like if this was an hour and a half, this would be all the best jokes would be in there and would be quite funny. But Sheen especially, I should mention, fourth lead of the show after Will Forte, Kristen Wiig, and Ryan Phillippe reprising his role from the movie. Lawrence Fishburne, fourth lead of this Peacock show. The two of them are very funny together. Like there's a whole bit where MacGruber and her were a couple, and then like they established they haven't been together for like the 10 years since the movie, and then she's with Lawrence Fishburne, and she says a whole thing to him about like, oh, I was waiting around for my Prince Charming, and I realized he wouldn't come when I had the Shrek in front of me all along, and that's you. And she says it so seriously. It's so fucking funny.
The thing about her, I think, that is so fascinating in the roles I've seen her in the roles and the SNL sketches I've seen, is that one of her gifts, and it's a thing that Will Ferrell also has, sometimes it goes bad, but like she is extremely committed to delivering whatever silliness and ridiculousness with full sincerity. I mean, like it's a lot of what makes this movie work, but it's like so like I watch Walk Hard all the time, and every time she like pops up as his wife, it is like she is so committed to delivering those ridiculous lines where she's just like, a candy house, I want a candy house.
You can't build a candy house, it'll melt. Not if it never rains.
Yeah, it's like she is so committed to just any sort of ridiculousness, and she's really good at just delivering it with a straight face and with full sincerity. And I think it's a lot of what makes her comedic stuff work. And you know, again, like when she's done dramatic stuff, she's pretty good, and she just doesn't do it as much, which, you know, again, it's kind of a thing of like, you want more Kristen Wiig in movies. Like she's a really good comedian, a really good actress. But yeah, she has a weird career.
Especially with like the SNL playlist I sent you, one of my favorite SNL sketches of all time is on there with Kristen Wiig, which is Liza Minnelli tries to turn off a lamp. I don't know if you got to see that one.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, my
So
God,
funny.
yeah. If you don't know out there, it's a sketch basically where it's her as Liza Minnelli and Jonah Hill as like her buddy, who's just sitting there just like, Liza, we gotta go to the premiere of Cats. It starts in 10 minutes. We gotta go. And Wig as Liza Minnelli proceeds to be like, oh, I just have to turn off this lamp. And she just does every weird Liza Minnelli pose possible while trying to just like turn off a lamp. And it's just this great back and forth between her and Hill where she's just like doing some random fucking thing to like try and turn off the lamp. And he's just like, Liza, forget the lamp. We gotta see Cats. Just like, oh, I just gotta turn this thing. And it's such great physical comedic acting. She's doing all these dumb fucking poses. And it's like we mentioned, the commitment to the bit. It is stellar commitment to the bit. Especially for such a dumb bit of like, turn off a fucking lamp.
It is, and I think that's what I love so much about, like, it's what my favorite like SNL performers are so good at, and obviously it's like a skill you have to have on SNL, but just the way that she does it, the way that when utilized well, we'll talk about this I'm sure next week with Will Ferrell, but when he does it, or when like Bill Hader does it, like it's what I love so much. It's my favorite thing is just someone committing to something so sincerely and earnestly when it is like the dumbest thing on. Like the one I really loved also was the Vincent Price Halloween special one where she is what is her name from Sunset Boulevard?
Gloria Stewart.
Yes. Yeah, as a pirate though. Which is just again, like she just does this like extended like I'm a pirate, rah, and like just like walks slowly to the camera, and it's just hilarious. Yeah, like
by the way, Gloria Swanson. I'm so sorry, true cinema
Gloria
fans
Swanson.
out there. Gloria Stewart, I believe, is the lady from Titanic. Gold Rose.
Which we'll get to something in Titanic in this movie, actually.
Perhaps. But no, yeah, I think that was what like really like kind of plastered her career to a certain extent on SNL, and then yeah, it's been so interesting, especially even in like the 2020s. She also has not done much besides like Wonder Woman 1984, Barb and Star, and then she was in that weird like Christmas orphan movie. I forgot what it's called. A Boy Called Christmas.
Okay.
And then Despicable Me 4. That's all she's done so far this whole decade.
Right, which
though I know she also has what's the Palm Royale show that's on Apple.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's like I feel like if you're an SNL cast member, they will automatically give you an Apple TV show. Like,
Yep.
It's really weird. Yeah. Yeah. It's also she's part of that franchise too, which is kind of interesting that she's like in the background of all of this, just been getting like check after check of Despicable Me of Illumination money, those Minion bucks.
Well, that and also How to Train Your Dragon, so you get DreamWorks bucks as well. Yeah.
Right. Huh.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a curious career. It's not like she's not starved for work necessarily. She's been consistently working this whole time, but it does kind of feel like she doesn't, weirdly, despite the fact that she was kind of put in the spotlight in SNL, it kind of feels like she's been running away from that a bit. In terms of like she doesn't want to be like the kind of like main star of too much. She likes kind of just playing around, being a supporting person, dabbling here and there. And I think it's a career I respect, even though I do wish at the same time, I agree with you, that she would have, like, just fun vehicles consistently. Like, I would have wished for kind of the, many Barb and stars. Though, in retrospect, once again, considering the alternate path could be a Melissa McCarthy thing, where she's just in a bunch of those and we get sick of her, and I would never want that to happen.
Yeah, like, it makes her, I guess, like, wrapping up here, like, it makes her this kind of rare star, like, again, like, when she pops up in Mother, you're like, is that Kristen Wiig? Like, wait, what is happening right now? And then, like, oh, is she going to be a major character in this movie? And, like, no, she's just one of the people at the party who, like, and, like, it does kind of make something like Barb and Star, or, like, her appearance in, like, even a movie as weird and not great as Wonder Woman 1984, like, feel kind of special, where you're like, oh, it's Kristen Wiig, like, this is great. Whereas, like, yeah, like, Melissa McCarthy, like, no offense to her, she has made great movies, but does, I guess, less so now, but, like, for a while there was making a lot of movies, and most of them are bad. So yeah,
Yeah, until very recently, when she was in stuff like the Peacock original Genie, the Little Mermaid remake, and of course in Frosted, everyone's favorite film from 2024, Unfrosted.
Just Melissa McCarthy, I mean, Spy rules, but, like, her performance in Will You Ever Forgive Me is, like, I think she should have won that year, the Oscar. Like, that is an incredible performance, and ever since then, yeah, she is just, I'm like, oh, are we gonna get more of this? And no, nothing like that. Back to business as usual. But
right, and maybe arguably worse. But yeah, let's go into something that isn't by any means worse. That is quite great in our opinion. Let's go ahead and get into Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
I'm Star, short for Starbra.
Assume yours is Barbara.
Nope, just Barb. Plain old Barb.
I want to thank Barb and Star for hosting tonight's Talking Club and for making their hot dog soup. I like the salt.
I like the hot dog.
It's not as runny as it usually is.
What is she drawing? I hope she gives me bigger teeth. Love big teeth. She loves big teeth. Even if it's just two eyes on a bunch of teeth. It would be so nice. Look, my new phone case. I love it! It's like I'm listening to the ocean. Wait, we don't have cell phones. I know I'm going to take it home and glue it to our landline. Hi! 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 Hi!
So, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar came out February 12th, 2021. As we kind of referenced earlier, this was a COVID release. I still remember vividly because it was supposed to come out in the summer of 2020, and summer of 2020 didn't really happen for movies. So it ended up being one of the premium VOD releases during COVID. And I'll say this much, that that kind of period from from March 2020 to about May of 2021, there's a lot of movies in there that I remember seeing that were new releases, and most of them I have not gone back to. Just out of a sheer maybe like not wanting to remember that time, not wanting to like really remember those particular movies necessarily, but one of the few I have revisited multiple times is Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
Same.
Which I remember when it came out in February, we were still kind of at that phase where it's like, are vaccines going to be available to everybody? What's going to happen? We were like getting antsy after, nearly a year at that point of not being able to like go out to movies and other social activities. I guess they have those, but our main concern was going to the movie theater, clearly. Yeah. And we were just like, oh, we got to be able to get out there. When can we? And Barb and Star was, available. And I'm like, what? I'm going to actually double down on like the premium VOD rental thing, whatever. I rarely did that during COVID, but that was one of the ones I did because I'd heard like a lot of people buzzing about it being very fun. And I fucking love Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, Bryan. It's become such a comfort movie to me. It's so enjoyable. It's so silly. It's so sweet. It is just like a balm of a movie every time I watch it.
I mean, this is the thing. I remember when this movie came out, and I did not go to see it in theaters. I don't even think I saw it at home. I think I waited till it was on Hulu, right? Because Neon has that deal with Hulu where most of their movies go to Hulu. And I remember, having the same feeling of like, this is so comforting to watch, especially at that time. When I agree with you, yeah, a lot of those movies, like, I just haven't gone back to just because just any one of all those movies feel like they just got like sucked into like a black hole. And like I don't even remember a lot of like the only other one from like 2021 I revisit like all the time is Spielberg's West Side Story, which is a real like has become a movie I just like watch whenever I need to like feel something. But with this movie, I remember seeing it and just kind of thinking like, this is exactly the kind of movie I want to watch right now, where I agree with you. There's something so comfy about it, you know, and there's also something that's so like joyful and full of like energy and life that this movie has. It's so full of color. It pops. It is just like it is a movie design. Like you could not watch this movie and not be in such a great mood afterwards. You know, it's just has that kind of effect. And also just felt like I remember seeing like the teaser trailer for this. Do you remember this teaser trailer at all by any chance?
I don't remember seeing much of any like ads honestly for this movie. I heard about it mostly through word of mouth.
The teaser trailer was just the montage of them on the couch and just the random close-ups of like Barb tapping her finger or like the shoulder is just kind of like it was all that like that was the trailer. And I think it was like the yo-yo the kid like riding his bike down the street, like that was the entire trailer. And I was like, what the fuck is this? This looks stupid. It looks ridiculous. What is this movie? And
then you watch and you're like, this is stupid. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and incredible. But I just like just that kind of like tease of like not showing any of the rest of the movie, just giving you like this short little snippet kind of felt like, whoa, what is this thing? Is it like, you know, and then hearing, yeah, like this is actually a really great comedy and lives up to that hype. And I think like kind of like you, like this is my like third time seeing this movie now because I do keep going back to it just because it feels so comforting. And I mean, we'll get to so many other things. I think this is like such a like my comedy type of movie. It's really well made. We will talk about the fucking amazing job that Jamie Dornan is doing here. But yeah, I absolutely adore this movie so much. It is one of my favorite comedies of this decade so far, easily, I think.
Well, and let's set this up a bit because this was obviously a movie released during COVID, so I'm sure some of you either didn't see it or memory hold it because of not wanting to remember this time. But if you're unaware, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar is pretty much what it says on the tin as a movie. On the basic level, where you have our two friends, Barb and Star. I should say Barb Quicksilver. Star doesn't get a last name, from what I recall.
Yeah.
But Star, played by Kristen Wiig, and Barb, played by Annie Mamalo, who are both the writers of this film. And they are two women in their 40s who live in Soft Rock, Nebraska, which that's a fake city name, but I fucking love Soft Rock. It's like an oxymoron name. It's so funny. And they work at a furniture store where at the beginning of the movie, they are seen, as you mentioned, kind of like tapping their hands and feet along to Shania Twain's I Feel Like a Woman, which is like the perfect song for them to do that too. And hanging out at the display couch where they literally shoo away a customer trying to buy the display couch. And they're called into the office by their boss who says, turns out that our entire business closed like 7 months ago. And they're just getting to our branch to tell us
no one
like,
bothered to tell them.
No one bothered to tell them. So they lose their jobs. And they're in a desperate state, especially after they also had a little book club with their friends, which includes Phyllis Smith, of course, from The Office, and another SNL cast member, Vanessa Bayer, who's so fucking funny in this movie.
So funny. Like,
you're late, Gail. Goodbye.
Just, yeah, that and like when Phyllis Smith wants to bring up like horses, and she's like, "We discuss what's on what the topic of the week is, and the topic is jobs."
And also, after she tries to disrupt again, she's like, "Give me your hot dog soup." And
the hot dog soup, it is so
it's
so stupid. Should also mention that they mentioned that their job at the furniture store is the hottest spot in town. It's just so funny.
But they're very distraught after all this. But they hear from another one of their friends, played by Wendy McLevin Covey of Reno 911 fame, that she had just come back from vacation at Vista Del Mar in Florida, which she says is like a great spot. You can just hang out on the beaches, and there's all sorts of hot guys there. You gotta go over. I'll send you a brochure. And, Barb and Star realize, like, you know what? Our lives are kind of stagnant here. We don't want to, just be cooped up in here and just kind of fade away. As they said, they're losing their shimmer, is the word they use. So they're like, you know what? Let's go to Vista Del Mar and have fun. And the fun that they come across is, the fun of the sand and the beach and a hot guy played by Jamie Dornan, who, as it turns out, ends up being the henchman of an evil supervillain named Sharon Fisherman, also played by Kristen Wiig, who was plotting to release a bunch of evil mosquitoes out to destroy Vista Del Mar as a revenge plot. And it was also assisted by Yo-Yo, played by Rain Doy, her child henchman, who's one of maybe the best henchman characters in all of fiction. So they have to stop that plot while they're also, like, having fun on the beach.
Yeah, finding love, getting not antiques, but like trinkets and souvenirs and stuff like that. Yeah. What I love so much about this movie is, yes, the heightened, like, Austin Powers, James Bond kind of like villain plot line going on here. It is such a fun contrast to like this perfect resort town, that like it works so well and it's so ridiculous, and it's played fully seriously. Like, what is her name again? Sharon Fisherman is like literally right out of like, a James Bond movie, and yet like it's played with full sincerity. But like, a thing I love so much about this movie is that they don't sort of stop the movie to address anything. Like, none of these ridiculous, silly elements are addressed at all. It is just taken with full earnestness, and I love that so much about this movie.
Well, you mentioned the Austin Powers angle of this, and I think that's exactly the kind of thing that we mentioned about, like, missing the kind of event element of a comedy movie. Those were probably some of the earliest examples to me of that. Not necessarily the first Austin Powers. That was famously like kind of a movie that wasn't a huge hit in theaters, but became massive on home video. And then The Spy Who Shagged Me was like the massive comedy hit of 99. And I still remember like that kind of massive sort of like attention toward a comedy like that. And even, of course, Goldmember, everyone's favorite entry in the Austin Powers franchise. But I feel like Mike Myers is weirdly a kindred spirit to Wiig in terms of like that kind of, when you look at kind of like this movie, you can tell that she like really wants to have that same kind of like flourish where there's like a lot of exuberant silliness, a surrealism almost to the comedy. And then when we get like the sort of like sincere character moments, they do kind of feel sincere, especially like I would say with the first Austin Powers. Yeah. You have that with like him and Elizabeth Hurley, that kind of thing. Like when the actual character moments happen, it doesn't interrupt the comedy, but it still is like, it still has a sincerity to it. I think that's really key with like Barb and Star, right? Because there's a version of this movie that is just like all the surreal, silly antics, and there's none of that heart. And I think that's a fun movie, but it's not quite like the really sweet movie that we have here, where like from the jump of seeing Barb and Star, you instantly get like these two people have been friends forever, and they're very silly, kind of cartoonish characters, but you never don't believe that like they mean the world to each other. And so when they do end up kind of having the weird kind of Three's Company scenario where they're lying to each other about like, oh, I'm going off and having adventures while I'm going off and fucking Jamie Dornan. You do get the sense of like, oh, they feel bad about doing this behind each other's backs, but they don't want to hurt each other's feelings. And then when it does blurt out and they are yelling at each other, it's like through silly stuff, but you are at the same time invested where it's like, I don't want these two to like break apart as friends. They're so great together. I would never want that to happen. Barb and Star is so great.
Yeah, it's the perfect balancing act this movie does, where there's even comedy within the sort of heartfelt, emotional like character stuff, but it doesn't undo that kind of the actual emotion going on there with those characters, which is something we complain about a lot, of like making jokes to sort of like to kind of take the piss out of the kind of, you know, emotional stuff, as it were. But like, I agree. Like, this movie immediately sets up like this is a movie about these two friends, and it is ultimately about that, even though it's about this fucking deadly mosquito, which is just so stupid. But it is still a movie about these two friends, and there's I agree. Like, the Austin Powers is a great example of just like, how do you make a character who, I mean, you just look at a picture of Austin Powers and you're just laughing, you know, because that's just like the funniest like look and design for a character. And same with Barb and Star, like the culottes and this movie literally starts with the definition of the word culotte, which is just great. But just that and the voice, right? Like, the voice is a big thing where they're doing that voice the entire movie, and yet when they're being sincere with each other, there is a real sweet quality to it. And yet, like, there's so many bits during this while they're like fighting that are just like hilarious. And yeah, it's just it's a really hard line to walk, and I love the way that this movie it does it. And like, again, like, yeah, I agree with you. Like, this movie wouldn't be fun if Barb and Star were actually ever like mad at each other. But because this movie moves so quickly, right? It has that kind of breakneck pacing of a lot of the best comedies like this, like Austin Powers. It doesn't give enough time for that, which is good, right? Like, I hate when movies, especially comedies, stop the movie dead and have a scene where it's like emotion. And this movie, it's like, well, you can weave that into the comedy and weave it into like the stupid, silly bits. It doesn't all have to be, you know, separate. And I just what I love so much about like what this movie's doing.
Yeah, the classic kind of like end of the second act, like, well, I guess we're not friends anymore. Yeah, fine.
Right.
Yeah. And then we have another 30 minutes where they're not together, and there's like an emotional montage that has a few jokes maybe peppered in. Yeah, it avoids a lot of those cliches, and I think it's mainly because the movie still decides to be like as silly as it is. And listen to the audio commentary with Mamalo, Wiig, and director Josh Greenbaum, who we'll get to in a minute. But they talked about like their log line of sorts was Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion meets Airplane. And I know you haven't seen Romeo and Michelle, but that is like that's a very great example of like that's a silly movie as well that is still very much built on like the friendship between Lisa Kudrow and Mina Savari's characters. But then adding the airplane fucking surreal weirdness just like adds a whole nother layer to this movie where you'll have like it feels very much like in the school of like the Zaz Zucker Abrams Zucker brothers kind of comedies, where you'll have just like people treat the emotions very sincerely, but then have just the dumbest shit like fucking crab puppets that have Morgan Freeman's voice or puppet seagulls that are on tires and shit like that. And that, I think, feels much more like earnest and enjoyable, especially like in the wave of like we've mentioned like Knocked Up and a few other things like that with like the Judd Apatow of it all. Like the Apatow sort of rise of comedy was much more built on kind of like a grounded and visually stagnant version of like, oh, the friends kind of like they're buddies together and you see them riff with each other a lot and then like they break apart kind of thing. There were so many movies like when I was especially like coming up in like high school, like those were the big comedy movies.
Yeah.
I like the fact that this movie feels very distinctly like kind of counter to that Apatow movement. It feels much more like bright and earnest and full of like silly dumb shit.
Very like screwball comedy, you know, very much leaning into that. And like Airplane is a perfect example actually. Like, yeah, just to hear that, because it is this like there's a kind of maximalism, I think, going on with like this movie and obviously with Airplane, where it's like obviously in terms of how bright and big they are, but like I mean, this movie has multiple musical sequences. It has like this amazing like, you know, the hotel that they stay at, just the different rooms and the bars and the like on the beach and stuff like that, like looks, you know, not grand necessarily, but there is a kind of maximalist kind of quality to it where it's throwing so much at you, so many bits, so many jokes, so many throwaway jokes that like it will do for like a second. I mean, we'll get to the the book bits in this, which is like I love a great like bit with a book title on, you know. But yeah, it's very different than the Apatow ones, which feel more like kind of hangout movies, you know, like feel very like, there's also like over 2 hours, and they're like, you know, they feel quite more exhaustive than this movie, which is very breezy and fun and just kind of like feels like a vacation kind of thing, which is probably why it appealed, I think, during like COVID specifically. But
it does feel kind of like, especially as two Florida boys. I mean, I haven't been to Vista Del Mar, which is a real city in Florida.
Is it really? Oh wow!
It is a real city. But I just love that with the way that this looks. It looks like a brochure for Florida on like every level, and I say that in a very positive light. That it just looks like so bright, all the colors pop. And it is a real testament to, I mentioned him, so we might as well talk about when we're talking about this. Josh Greenbaum, who directorially, this is his first narrative feature. Because before this, he had done a lot of documentary stuff. Like he did Too Funny to Fail, which was the Dana Carvey show documentary to tie back to SNL. And then after this, he did Strays, which I did watch earlier today. Not a great movie, but I think has some of the visual charm of Barb and Star. It just doesn't have a great script necessarily, because it's all about dogs talking, saying fuck, pretty much. But he also did Will and Harper, the documentary.
Yes, yeah.
The Will Ferrell Harper Steel documentary, that was very good. And yeah, I think he has like a really keen visual eye. I think even in like some of his documentaries, like Will and Harper, has like a fun road movie vibe at the same time that it's like kind of grounded in reality. There is kind of like a brightness to like the two of them going on that little vacation that they have. And I think that it's not quite as like bright and colorful as Barb and Star, but it makes me curious for more of what he's going to do, especially he's rumored to be the guy who's going to be finally directing the Spaceballs sequel that's supposedly happening.
I've never seen Spaceballs. Is it a good idea to do that now?
I don't think it's a great idea necessarily, especially when also the person they have like kind of spearheading it is Josh Gad, my enemy to a certain degree. Though the two writers are Benji Sammet and Dan Hernandez, who also wrote stuff like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Detective Pikachu.
Oh, okay.
So I think there is like, I will say this much, like I'm largely against legacy sequels, but I think it would be interesting to do a Spaceballs now, considering since the first Spaceballs, like all the prequels happened and the sequel trilogy and the Disney era, there's been a lot of other stuff where you can mine stuff out of Star Wars that I don't think you could if they made like the sequel in 1990 or whatever with Mel Brooks. I think there is potential to that if they do it right. Who's to say if they'll do it right? Especially with, once again, Josh Gad, somebody who I have a tumultuous relationship with, in as much as I've been told I look like him a lot, and to the degree that
I'm so sorry.
Back when they had the Facebook photo thing where like when you posted something, it would automatically tag one of your friends. A friend of mine posted a picture of Josh Gad and automatically tagged me.
Oh, I mean, another reason why Facebook is awful and evil.
I mean, the worst reason. I don't think I think they've done anything terrible since that at all, necessarily. Not at all. That was the worst crime for me. They can take all my data. I don't care. But to get back to Greenbaum, I think he really shows off, especially like this being his first narrative feature, like a lot of like great comedic style, which is like I mentioned with like after the Apatow era. Like I think that's part of what drew people away from comedies in theaters. Yes. It was like, oh, they don't look that visually like grand. Like I don't need to see Seth Rogen riff on a big screen necessarily. And it's a bummer because like I love a great visually dynamic comedy. And I feel like the only filmmaker like still doing that is someone like Edgar Wright, really. He's the only guy that gets the ability to do that necessarily. And I just love like a visually dynamic comedy is like something that I really treasure when it comes about. And this is a great example.
Yeah, I mean, especially I think this has also become a thing because of like digital, right? Like that's obviously a big thing of like movies just look blander, you know, now, and especially for comedies which are being shot like it's, you know, obviously they're being shot on digital, you know, unless you have like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like any example of a comedic director shooting on film, but I can't think, like, you know, like that's more reserved for like, you know, Sean Baker, like Anora is a comedy in some kind of way, you know, like we're recording this right after the Oscars, so
Yes.
studio comedies like this are not shot in interesting ways, and yeah, it kind of sucks because I think there's a lot of great like there's a lot of great visual gags, but just like again the use of like color for something like for a movie like this, which is shot on digital, and like you know there's fucking way more color in this movie than there is in something like Wicked in the musical sequences, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's something that, yeah, we don't have a lot of. And I think, yeah, part of that is Apatow and the way he made movies and how influential that was. But then, you get something like this, which is not just visually, like, popping with color, but the transitions in this movie are so fun. Like, just the wipes and, like the fun kind of, like, very Star Wars, you know, kind of transitions in this movie are so fun. And, like, again, we'll get to the musical sequences, but there's just so much fun visual stuff going on. Like, I mean, there's a great bit where, like, when Barb and Star both go to see Jamie Dornan and, like, they both go on a walk and it's shot the exact same way. And it's just, like...
It's amazing. One of my favorite gags. It's just, like, they go on the same exact date, like, beat for beat. And it's perfectly, like, visually replicated. And it's so great. And I think you can even see that with, like, the way that he differentiates the different locations. Like, all those colors really pop once we get to Vista Del Mar. But when we're in, like, Soft Rock, Nebraska, there still is, like, a color, but it feels a bit more kind of, like, sepia tone almost. It kind of feels like it's a Wizard of Oz kind of thing. Where it's like, oh, it's all the colors don't quite pop as well to visually contrast when we go over there. Or even, like, just the thing when we have, like, the big Palm Vista Hotel versus Palm Vista Motel thing, where you have, like, the hotel's, like, big and vibrant, the big musical number happens, and all the colors are, like, everywhere, and everyone's wearing, like, pink and blue pastels, and it's, like, big and massive, and then they have to go over to the motel after just... I'm going to shout him out. Fucking Michael Hitchcock is the guy who owns the hotel. Is so funny.
He's good.
He's like, wait, no, that's 2 football fields away in the hot, hot sun. Go ahead. Get out of here. And then when we get over to the motel, which is being run by Gary Bednam, I believe, who's the guy from 40-Year-Old Virgin, who ran the store.
Oh, right. Yeah. That guy's really funny, too. I love the way he's kind of, like, so casually just, like, no sheets, okay? And they're like, oh, well, okay. And then, like, and no, there's no pillows. just the casual nature that he's just like, well, you don't need pillows, right, to sleep. It's really funny.
Yeah. But you know what? We've been talking a lot about some of the visual stuff. Bryan, why don't we talk a bit about Annie Mamalo? Who, you know, like, we've talked a lot about Wiig, but our co-lead here, Mamalo, is someone who, like, had come up with Kristen Wiig and, like, the Groundlings and stuff. They had originally played these characters in the Groundlings. That's kind of, like, the origin point of Barb and Star. And she, interestingly, had her debut performance in a movie in Bewitched, which we'll be talking about next week. So we'll see her there. But, I mean, she's, like, popped up in a bunch of different movies, like in Bridesmaids, which she co-wrote. She plays the woman on the plane who's talking about how, like, she's so nervous about, like, flying and, like, scaring out Kristen Wiig. But she, like, would pop up in, like, This Is 40 and Bad Moms and a bunch of other stuff like that. But this is, like, I think her first, like, kind of lead performance that I could have seen. And I think she works incredibly well off Wiig. Like, there's a danger of, like, oh, is she just kind of copying Wiig? And I think Barb and Star feel like distinct characters, even though they have similar hairdos and have the same accent. Like, I like the fact that Star is very down on herself, but like, oh, I can never find a man again after my husband left. And Barb is like, oh, I've had issues because, like, my husband died in the trampling accident because he was a rodeo guy, but not in a rodeo, at Black Friday trying to get a TV.
They're like, yeah, they had 50-inch screens for $200. I did get one.
But I like the fact that, like, her journey on this movie is very different from Star's, where Star, like, falls for Jamie Dornan and there's, like, she's kind of finding, like, a romantic passion in her life again. But Barb is just more about, like, I want to do adventurous shit, because she's very, like, nervous and nerve-wracked because of, like, the whole history with Ron Quicksilver, R.I.P. to a real one, her husband of late. And I just love, like, that she gets, like, one of my favorite bits of this movie is her whole, like, montage, where she's like, oh, I'm afraid of snorkeling, and then by the end of it, she's, like, hang gliding and smoking a joint, and then, like, playing bongos, running across a bunch of like flaming rocks, and then getting on a fucking dirt bike and jumping over a giant cliff or whatever. Like, just that whole journey for her, I just find so like charming and endearing as a contrast to Star.
Yeah, like Wig is so good at like the emotional stuff with Jamie Dornan, which we will get to, but like I love Annie Malulo, and like in this, yeah, her journey is like so funny. And again, like, yeah, the movie makes them very distinct from each other, but in really like nuanced kind of ways that I think are like, it really works for them, where they feel kind of like one, like whenever someone comes up to them and they both in unison go like, hi, you know. But yeah, like what that, like her like journey of like self-discovery is like, it's absolutely hilarious. I love her, like seeing her when she is dressed up in like that outfit when she like runs over the hot coals and everything is so great. My favorite reaction shot she has is when she meets Tommy Bahama.
Yep.
Played by Andy Garcia, who rules. And just like, he says something to her about like finding her truth. What if I don't know my truth? And he's like, what if you do? And her reaction of like, oh, going wide-eyed is like so perfect. And I think it's like so much of what makes her performance like so good is just like the reaction that she has off of people, and I love it. It's really great. God, yeah, like and like she's not someone who has like, she was in Barbie very briefly, I believe, but
yeah, she's one of the moms that like Barbie and Ken pass by at the school, I believe.
Oh yes, yeah, right. Would love to see her do more with or without Wig, but just like, yeah, she is so funny in this movie.
She's also very funny in Confess Fletch. She plays the lady who's like really stoned out, and there's the scene where John Hamm is trying to like talk to her, and she's like so stoned that she doesn't realize that like her hair's on fire and like her house is burning up.
Yes.
Basically. She's very funny in that as well. Very funny movie. That's not quite as visually dynamic as that one, but a movie I would have fucking loved to have seen in the theater with anyone.
Right.
I actually saw that in the theater to no one being around. Literally. Yeah. I just had the whole theater to myself. So sad, but bummer. Great movie, Confess Fletch.
While we're on John Hamm, though, I do want to go a little bit back to the SNL sketches that I watched. Him and the Vincent Price one is so fucking funny. Where he's playing James. He's playing James Mason.
Oh, Mason. Yes, right. Yeah.
He is nailing that accent, that transatlantic accent so well, and just every line he has is just he's on fire. John Hamm is amazing.
One of the great hosts of SNL, John Hamm, in recent years in particular. He's like of course Michael Bublé sketch and stuff like that. Very funny. We talked in terms of like Wig in general, but I think with Star, like, I like the fact that she's the one that kind of, like, ignites this idea as well. Like, when that scene where they're sitting together in their beds, I love the fact that they live together and they sleep in separate beds, like, next to each other, like a sitcom couple from the 50s. It's so funny. But when they were talking back and forth with each other, but, like, we should do something, shouldn't we? And I think Barb is like, we should get those socks with, like, the individual toes. That's, like, different. I've never worn those before. And it's like, no, but I think something, like, bigger. Let's like actually go to Vista Del Mar because we want to have like fun bits. We haven't had like fun times like recently. All our fun times from the past. Like, remember when we went on the haunted hayride and we saw that guy and he came out with a knife and we were like, oh, it's so scary. But it turned out he was actually a serial killer. I want that movie, by the way. I want the Barb and Star horror movie where they're being chased by a serial killer and they don't notice it.
But like that's exactly what I mean. Like, that scene is so sincere of them kind of like realizing like, hey, our lives are in a rut, and like, I love when Star is like, what if that like all that's happened today is a sign that like we should do something, and yet there is that fun, like that ridiculous little story in there that is so funny and yet like doesn't undermine any of like the actual emotion going on here, right? Like that's like the tightrope that this movie's walking.
Very true. And I think Wig puts all that into Star in a really fun way, where you see her, talking about stuff like her insecurities, like during that montage you were talking about of like the date, where she's like, oh yeah, my husband had a foot fetish and I could never please him because my toes stopped growing after 3 months. They're like little grains of rice, I believe is what
Oh
she
yeah,
calls
he's like,
them.
yeah, he's like, he left me for Dina, and he had huge feet or something. It's just great.
Right, but like that's a great example of like weaving in kind of like the fun and charm into like one thing, this kind of like upsetting story that like actually links her to Jamie Dornan in an interesting way, where it's like, you know, people sometimes like they don't really notice you when they don't really like have any kind of seriousness about like being like a real couple and stuff like that, and that how that connection. Like it's weird how like I believe that relationship so much, despite the fact that it's between two like cartoon characters,
Right.
basically in live action, and it's like still feels like sincere and sweet. And I want those two crazy kids to get together.
Before we move on to talk about the other cast members here, we should talk about Kristen Wiig's other performance in this movie, which
Right.
I don't even think I registered that it was Kristen Wiig the first time I watched this, playing Sharon Fisherman, who looks ridiculous. Just the design of like her character like is hilarious. The like very like James Bond, but like I mean very like Dr. Evil, but like with the ridiculousness. Like with the first scene we see of her is she's like, I'm gonna make myself a drink, and pulls out like one of those soda machines that you see at like a fucking like Taco Bell or something.
I'm gonna make a suicide, and she like puts it through, and just a dash of lemon infused iced tea. I like the extra kick. Yeah, that feels much more kind of like a traditional Kristen Wiig SNL character.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Whereas like Star, like she would have like, you know, there's bits of like Target Lady and some of her other recurring characters in Star. What I love so much about like the Sharon Fisherman character, she feels very much like a classic thing on SNL is the 10 minutes to one sketch, which is basically the sketch they do right before the end of an episode of SNL, which is usually like where they stick the weirdest fucking sketches possible. And Sharon Fisherman feels right out of one of those sketches that would have aired very close to 1 a.m. when you're like nodding off and you're like almost wondering like, did I dream this? Is this a real thing? And I love the fact that this is the villain for the entire movie, and we do manage to build, despite the fact that she is this ridiculous Bond-esque villain with like the we should mention she has the tragic, very rare skin disease of pigmentia genaria hysterica whiteskinica, which is great, perfect fake bullshit skin disorder to have. That like she is like trying to like, you know, kill people with these mosquitoes and all this other stuff, like very much a classic villain. And then we get her backstory that's very silly, but also gives her just enough of an emotional arc to where by the end of it, when Barb and Star are like, we'll be your friend, even though she did all this horrible stuff, trying to like kill everybody in Vista Del Mar, how everyone just embraces her, you do actually kind of feel it, even though once again it's fucking so stupid. But you still like, care?
I mean, even when she tells her story, I love that she's like, pulls up a chair and like sits Yo-Yo down and is like, this is my tragic origin story. It's so funny. It reminds me of like the fucking like Jim Carrey Grinch movie, but like actually good, you know, because that movie tries to do the whole like tragic backstory, but that movie sucks.
But they try, and that's one of those examples where like that's a silly comedy, but that's the sincere element where it's like, oh no, he was cast aside as a child because he was different. And this movie has that, but I love the way they do it where there's the bit where like, oh, I went to school in Vista Del Mar and everyone started calling me names like pale girl and white skin and asshole.
I mean that, and the friend that she makes, like Maria something, and is like, we were walking home one day and she got eaten by an alligator.
Which, you know, as Florida boys, we know that tragedy. You know, we've lost many childhood friends like just by alligators randomly.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's so funny. I do love also Yo-Yo's reaction to that hearing that story where he's like, I think your feelings are valid and this is the only answer. It's just perfect for like justification for why she's killing an entire town or whatever.
We gotta mention, the way I describe the plot is a bit inconsistent with the way that we're introduced to the characters, because our first moment of the movie, after the culottes definition, is Yo-Yo singing along to Guilty by Barbra Streisand and Barry Gibb. And every time I watch this movie, I have to listen to that fucking song again because it's like fits so perfectly right at the top of this fucking movie, and it's like such a, once again, bizarre way to open this movie. That's like, oh, it's Barb and Star going to Vista Del Mar. It's like, wait, a little kid on a bike delivering newspapers, singing along to this guilty song, then going to a tree, getting scanned by an owl robot,
So
and then
funny.
and then going into a secret hatch that leads to an underground lair. It's such a brazen way to open your fucking movie.
Just the weird payoff of like when he delivers that final newspaper and he like stares at the house for a minute, and it doesn't come back until like 5 minutes later when you find out that that's like the doctor who they've like kidnapped to work on this like project or whatever. Like that's his house that they're blowing up. It's just like, it's, yeah, like such a ridiculous way to open this movie, and yet like by this opening I'm immediately in, because like just the comedic sensibility of like, right, the tree and the owl, and like when he's like, oh, is she ready for me? And he's like, yeah, you better change though. And he goes into a room, smoke fills the room, the doors close, the doors open, and he's in like a black turtleneck suit. It's just, it's so ridiculous, and it's such a great way to like open this movie. I love that doctor. Who is the doctor character? He looks familiar.
Yeah, I looked this up earlier. I believe he's credited as elderly scientist, which is kind of rude. He doesn't look that old.
Patrick Bristow.
Yes.
Been in a few like Michael Bay movies, like Pain and Gain. He's in Austin Powers.
Well, and one of my favorite performances of his is in Showgirls. He plays the choreographer guy, who has the line of "Thrust it, thrust it. You gotta work with me here. Thrust it." He's very funny in that as well. He's a great character actor. But yeah, I want to shout out that kid. Rain Doy is the name of the kid who plays Yo-Yo. Wonderful kid performance from this guy. Like such a perfect, like a weird, bizarre man in a child's body. With like just that opening where you mentioned like the newspaper bit. I love that he throws the newspaper and like he gets super serious, and then there's a pause, and then he gets right back on his bike and just immediately goes back into the song.
Yeah.
Like, so good. And then even later on, like, we get, like, him peppered throughout the movie with stuff like you mentioned your feelings are valid, which is very funny. But then him in the submarine, where it's just, like, I love that bit where Kristen Wiig's talking to him, just like, all right, now, don't go too far, just, like, very small turns, back and forth.
Yeah, don't keep the steering wheel straight, remember? Just...
Right, and then, like, he flips the switches, and then it's just like, and it's all the different sound effects, including, like, the number you've called is no longer in service.
And I love that, like, again, part of the thing of this movie of, like, we're not going to explain any of this silly bullshit. The only, like, line we get that explains anything about why he's working for her is Kristen Wiig in, like, a great line delivery, who's like, God, I love that little boy that I stole.
Yes.
One of the great, like, throwaway lines in this movie that is, like, that's all you get for, like, origins of what's going on here, but it's so great. It's so funny.
But, you know, we've been dancing around him, and we shouldn't dance around like a baby ballerina anymore, about Jamie Dornan in this movie, who most would have probably known at this time for playing Christian Grey, of course, in the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy prior to this. Yeah, I remember, like, really only knowing him from those movies, and being like, oh, I'm curious to see him in a comedy, but as much as we've praised, you know, our two lead actresses, he kind of, like, steals the movie at certain points. And it's a magnetic supporting comedic performance that is, like, so just bizarre and feels the most kind of in the vein of in the Zucker movies that I mentioned earlier. Yeah. They would tend to cast, like, you know, Leslie Nielsen or Robert Stack or Lloyd Bridges in these, like, comedic roles, but have them treated seriously. And Dornan weirdly, like, fits that really well, because you can tell he's, like, once again, with, like, what we're talking about, playing the emotion seriously and letting the comedy flourish from that, he just really wants to be an official couple with Sharon Fisherman, and he feels forlorn and, like, so, like, lovesick, and seeing him kind of flourish with Star is genuinely kind of sweet, even as he's doing shit like the Edgar's Prayer song, which I referenced at the top, the Seagull on the Tire Can You Hear My Prayer song, which might be, like, as much as this movie is, like, so consistent throughout, that might be the comedic height of the whole fucking movie. Yeah. Especially the way that, like, it happens where, like, he's on a phone call in his room with Sharon Fisherman, and then she hangs up, and he just lays down on the bed, and you just get the shot immediately of, like, him going from, like, a laid position to burning. It's so fucking phenomenal. What a great fucking turn. It made me a Jamie Dornan fan, which, based on the 50 Shades of Grey movies, I never would have expected to be. But, hot damn, just like, this earned so much goodwill for me.
Yeah, I mean, those like 50 Shades movies are just like, you know, him and Dakota Johnson are doing the best with what they got.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I remember seeing him in was Marie Antoinette, the Sofia Coppola movie, where he plays one of the like soldiers with like Tom Hardy as well. Yeah, he is fucking cooking in this movie. Like, it is such an incredible performance. Like, he easily would have made my top 5 supporting performances of that year, because like it's exactly what I want. Like, he is so committed to all of this like ridiculous bullshit. The musical is so good. Seeing him like dance on the beach is incredible. Like, he is so amazing at that. Like, when he's like when he's kicking his feet up in the sand. It's just like
a frustrated man.
It's so amazing. Again, speaking to the many amazing reaction shots, the shot when Kristen Wiig and him, Star, are on the beach, and she's saying like, "Yeah, don't you ever just want to be like an official couple with someone?" And his eyes like light up.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's perfect. I rewatched that like 3 times because it's just like, it's the way he's able to like just perfectly like give you exactly what you need with just that facial reaction. It's just incredible. And like, there is a real sincerity to like this performance, right? Like, you can tell that like this Edgar actually like loves Star. Like, there's true like love and connection there with them, even though like just the ridiculousness of so many of the like setups here with like I just love when he like has the gun on like the nightstand and has to like move it before he like goes with Barb on the walk or whatever. Like, just so many amazing bits in this movie with him.
Well, even we should mention like the scene where they meet up with each other at the bar, which is like wonderful. Where it's just like, oh, you feel like it's gonna be, you know, in a typical comedy like this, you would figure it's gonna be like, oh, they like encounter each other and he's just gonna be like, ugh, I can't. What are you two weird characters doing here? That's what a lot of like these SNL kind of comedies would do. But I love that he kind of gets into the groove with them pretty early after admittingly. Another one of my favorite fucking exchanges where he says like, yeah, what's your room number, buddy? Oh, 611. Oh, 611. Oh my God, I can't believe it. We're in 1112 or whatever. It's like they're not anywhere near each other.
His like small reactions in that moment too are like so great, where he's like, what? Like, what the fuck? Yeah.
Right, but he gets over that pretty quickly after they started having drinks, including their buried treasure, which is
that's great.
One of the great like visual bits of this movie where they drink the buried treasure, and I love that bartender guy coming up just being like, so wait, you drank all that already? Yeah. And so you found the 3 pills inside the treasure box? Yeah. And then you found the little tab of acid that was inside the helmet of the diver? Yeah. But where's the treasure? It's like, that's your treasure. And comedies do like the drug trip thing a lot. And I find it can be very hit or miss for me, especially as of recent. But this is one of my favorite examples of that, where they just like float away on their little barn.
It's like a fucking
and they
Spike Lee
goodbye.
dolly shot.
Yes, love it. And then they dance along to, you kind of teased earlier, but the Titanic remix.
So good.
And it's such a great fucking like dance montage. And then the immediate cut as well to like the 3 of them just stacked on top of each other in bed. And I love that it's
such
kind of
a
like
great, yeah.
Right, it's such a great like cut, but I also love the fact that it's like it doesn't become like a, you know, in a worser comedy, especially that would have been made maybe 10 years ago, like a gay panic bit. I love that Barb and Star are just very comfortable with like, oh yeah, we rode each other like horses and shit like that.
And she's like, oh, that's why my back is hurt like a little bit. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's...
I mean, while we're talking about that visual, I want to shout out the cinematographer of this movie is a guy named Toby Oliver. Actually has more experience with horror prior to this.
Oh, wow.
Like, he shot Get Out, and also the 2 Happy Death Day movies, which do lean more on the comedy angle. And you can kind of see, especially like the Happy Death Day element of it, really shows up in this movie, I think, which is how, like, once again, visually vibrant, and how, like, that guy shoots the gags like that, where it's like, oh, we're not going to shoot this in, like, a silly way, we're going to shoot this like, no, this is a big, elaborate drug trip, like you mentioned, the Spike Lee dolly shot, and then even, like, the dance montage, it feels like we're just, like, in the middle of, like, an intense kind of, like, oh, we're, like, Raven, almost, and it doesn't feel like it's playing the comedy of too much, it's just shot like a real fucking movie.
Yeah, there's a couple bits during this like dance montage I love. One is the like the like ass shot of the three of them in the culottes.
Yes.
It's just so funny. And then like this bit that they do like only like twice in the movie. Like I'm surprised they had the restraint to do it only twice, where they cut back to the book club in Nebraska.
Yes.
Just like randomly and just like sitting there silently, and like one of them is like, I like looking at Wick, but I don't like sitting in it. This is so ridiculous and it's so funny. And just like what a great like cutaway to that. This sequence, which is like, it's also kind of playing on a lot of these like club kind of like scenes we get a lot of the time where characters are like dancing and feeling very free and stuff like that. Like it very much feels like it's playing on that, which is like so funny with like the slow motion and everything. It's just like, it's such a perfectly like done bit, and with that like fucking crazy Spike Lee dolly shot away is like such is that kind of visual stuff that we're missing from a lot of comedy, like we talked about.
To get back to Dornan, I think like you really do need, I think, somebody like him to like really counterbalance. Like he feels the closest maybe to a regular human being compared to Barb and Star, but I love that he becomes like more kind of silly and animated as like he interacts with them, as he like is in the like magical world of Vista Del Mar, the Oz that is Vista Del Mar. He just becomes like more vibrant and silly, and is able to like have that, even like during like the montage I talked about earlier, where like we see Animal Model like going on her adventures, like him and Wig like actually growing to like love each other, like the bit where they're like covering each other with fucking suntan lotion. And it's just like it's so good. Sloppy, and it's like fucking like slipping all over each other. Or like they make the little sand art, and it like has their faces perfectly like within the pink sand thing that they make and shit like that. It sells the fact that they're like falling for each other, but then it also just sells like, once again, like the silliness at the same time. Like right after that, they're like on the beach walking together, and she talks about, she's like, "Oh, you've been pleasuring me a lot lately, but you know, I want your dong to go reach my heart," I believe is what she says.
No, yeah, she says like, your dong went so far it reached my heart or something.
Yes.
Like that. It's like, it is both like incredibly funny and also like kind of sweet, like a very sweet line. Yeah, like and what I love that like what this movie doesn't do is it doesn't do the bit after the kind of one night stand where Barb and Star go to visit him to go on a walk because they're horned up for Jamie Dornan. But it doesn't do the thing where he's like, "Oh, these women are bothering me, whatever, blah, blah, blah." Like he's kind of going along with it. Like he goes along with like them until he likes hanging out with them. Like I like that it avoids the kind of that unnecessary kind of like plot stuff that a lot of comedies tend to do.
Also avoids having like a love triangle thing with them.
Yeah.
Which I think a Western movie would also do. I love the fact that like Barb goes up and is just like, "You know what? I realized I didn't need this after all. You convinced me." And he's just like, "I didn't." Okay. He hasn't said like, I think, a word during their like get together, but just convinced. And also I love one of the lines that Barb says during this. She's like, "Oh, I just want to live my life again as a baby. I wish I was a baby again. I was so flexible back then."
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, the fact that it doesn't put the conflict on it being a love triangle and more about, like, them lying to each other, right, as, like, friends, which is, like, it's much more believable, it's not as annoying, right, like, the love triangle thing, like, just wouldn't work in this movie.
But also it feels like it has the same fun of, like, a 70s sitcom kind of thing, where it's like, oh, there's, like, a mistaken identity kind of thing, like, oh, I'm just gonna go off to the bath. And I love that, where she's like, she just keeps the bath on, and then she talks to Star later, but like, "Oh yeah, you know, I saw a turtle in my bath," yes, or whatever.
That, yeah, and like the sort of like, you know, she does the classic like leaves a pillow with a face on it, which is just a great bit,
right? Or the thing with her temperature as well, where it's like 137. Yeah, that's a fever.
Yeah, it doesn't have like, it has these characters be like not oblivious necessarily, but it's reveling in the ridiculousness of like this setting and this plot and everything, and like.
But also, it revels in the fact that these two trust each other, which is also like very key. It's like, oh, we're like absolutely 100% trust each other, and that's what's the issue that like breaks. It's like the lying thing. It's more about just like, oh, I trust you 100% no matter what in every single silly bullshit scenario, and you broke that trust, and that hurts. Like, I love that that's like the true emotional through line as they're doing bullshit like the 137 Fever or the turtle thing. Like, it's like we keep talking about with this movie, just like having the silly gags rooted in an emotional earnestness.
While we're on this sequence, I love Barb like sneaking out of the bathroom window and using like the floaty to like like pass by. I mean, during like this whole kind of sequence where like Barb hangs out with Edgar and then she goes to hang out with Edgar, like part of using the comedy and the sincerity is when like she's like, oh, I should go, but I need you so bad, please let's go, fuck me over by the stairs. And then like afterwards she's like, oh wait, no, we need to go again, it is just like there's a genuine kind of chemistry between them, even with like how ridiculous and stupid it all is and how it's presented.
Well, the one person we really haven't talked about, Brian, I'm curious about your thoughts on this, is Damon Wayans Jr., who is interesting in terms of our SNL season because this is the son of a former cast member, Damon Wayans, who was there during, I believe it was the infamous 11th season, where he got fired. He's one of the few people to get fired from SNL. I would recommend very much watching, Peacock had the series of documentaries that was about like individual like SNL topics, and one of them was about this 11th season. And there was a sketch that Damon Wayans did where it was supposed to be him interrogating Griffin Dunn, who was the host, as like a police officer. And he was very fed up at that time with SNL, and he wasn't really enjoying his time there. So he decided to self-sabotage by doing the exact same sketch, but in a effeminate voice, I'll just say, which was not how it was originally rehearsed and not how it was originally written. And pretty much the moment that sketch ended, Lorne Michaels like fired him on the spot.
Jesus. Huh.
Yeah, he has a history with SNL through his father, but here, Damon Wayans Jr. Plays Darlie Bunkle, who is a character that is an informant who wants to remain private, but keeps revealing all sorts of stuff to particularly Jamie Dornan, the whole movie. I will say, I think Damon Wayans Jr. is generally very funny. I think I like him as like, especially in the second generation of Wayanses. I think he's quite a funny performer. I think Darlie Bunkle is probably like my least favorite element of this movie, in that it feels kind of like a one-note joke. There's still funny things with him, but I would say of the various like vast array of characters, he's probably my one weak spot, I would say, in the movie. I don't know how you feel about him.
I agree with you. Like, there's really funny bits with him, and he is very much in tone in line with like the tone that the movie's taking, I think.
Yeah.
I just think this character, this bit needed more development. It feels a bit half-baked, where I agree with you. It's a bit one note, and so many of the other bits throughout the movie are really fleshed out and really kind of like develop and have like a lot of depth to them, it seems, from a comedic standpoint. And it is the one bit, I think, of this movie that is just kind of like, either remove it entirely, which, I wouldn't love that necessarily, because I do kind of like the bit where he's like, him leaving the note, like the chip with like the giant like piece of paper that has like his information on it.
So then it's like his height and weight and everything, and it's just damn it. Because that's like his whole thing, so they'll just reveal things suddenly. It's just like, all right, do you see what the phone number is on your end? Yeah, I do see like that phone number you're talking about. Well, does it say Darlie Bunkle on it? No, it doesn't. Damn it. Like, he's revealing information like that. I think the bigger problem for me is that like he feels so separate from most of the movie.
Yeah.
Because like what I like about the various kind of supporting characters who are around in Vista Del Mar is that they all are kind of like communal with everyone. Like I mentioned, the bartender George, played by Quayne Patterson, feels like he's a kind of a part of it with everybody, and like actually is genuinely interested in like Barb and Star. It's like, oh, we love having you here, Barb, that kind of thing. Like I like that the side characters like feel like they're kind of integrated with the Barb and Star story. Like they're really like part of this environment, and he feels mostly separated. Like the funniest stuff he gets is when he's during the climax at the Sea Shack festival thing, where he's just like, oh, look, I'm in my disguise, and it's like a naked lady shirt or whatever. He's just wearing, it's like, my disguise shirt.
That and him like rolling around with Jamie Dornan is also just funny, just because, you know, come on, like it's just
right.
funny.
It's a very funny like awkward comedy fight, and then like while Barb and Star are out there, he's like, oh man, that sucks that they're probably dead. Anyway, tell me if you want to get something to eat later. Then he leaves.
Yeah, like it's a weird thing, and like I wouldn't want to remove him from this movie. I just like this movie's not long, you know. It's 107 minutes. It moves very quickly, and for a movie that is doing that, this feels like a bit too much. It's a little too stuffed. But yeah, like there's still some pretty funny bits with him, I would say.
But yeah, because like, I wish he was more integrated in the way that some of these other people, like we should mention the piano player guy. Richard Cheese, who I want to shout out because I know this guy in an interesting way where he's like a musical parody artist. His real name's Mark Jonathan Davis. I had heard some of his stuff because, to firmly also date myself, back in the days of LimeWire, he was one of many artists who would be mislabeled as Weird Al Yankovic for like any comedy song. Like, if you looked up any kind of comedy music, it would 90% of the time be listed as Weird Al, even if it was not a Weird Al song. And I remember he did a song that was a parody of Copacabana, but about the Star Wars Cantina, which I found very funny. And also, you might know him as, remember the bit in Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead where they have a cheesy cover of Down with the Sickness?
Yes? Yeah.
Yes, that's him.
Oh,
that's like kind of his
okay.
bread and butter, is doing like cheesy lounge singer versions of like songs that where it doesn't fit, which is a weird thing where Zack Snyder's used him a bunch of times. Like, his band is the band that's playing at Bruce Wayne's party in Batman v Superman, and also in Army of the Dead, the cover of Viva Las Vegas is by Richard Cheese as well.
Oh, that's so weird, huh?
So yeah, Zack Snyder really likes Richard Cheese, I guess, but he's very funny in this. Like, it's just like doing the like I love boobies, that song, and then the bit where Barb is like, oh, I just love Richard's songs, they always brighten my mood. And he's like, a bunch of my friends from high school have passed.
Yeah, I love it because like he does the boob song like twice. And so by the time he like the third time he shows up, you're like, oh, it's gonna be the boot, and then it's the like, yeah, my friends from high school have recently deceased, and it's just like, it's great, and it's the thing, like I keep mentioning it, but like, no one acknowledges that this guy is singing about like boobs at the restaurant or anything. It is just like, it's just there. It's just so funny, and like, it is such a ridiculous thing that like it's part of what we're talking about of like this movie's so stuffed with like supporting people or just like. Even just kind of like side characters that just show up for a scene or two, like the manager or like this guy, like that just really makes Vista Del Mar feel more alive and feel more like a, you know, I say real place, but real place in the way that you put it, where it feels like a brochure, as you put it, like of this town, which I think is like, yeah, it's so great to like all of these kind of weird side characters who are doing their own like weird bits and stuff.
It just really captures that thing that you want out of a vacation, right? Where it's like you escape your humdrum life and you go to a place that isn't just like, oh, a lavish paradise, but it's just like a weird land where you meet strange people and they're like jovial and odd and off kilter, and whether that's you know, like a funny lounge singer or a very friendly bartender, or once again a crab puppet that talks like Morgan Freeman.
And his name is
Morgan Freemund.
Yes,
with
a
an
D.
O-N-D at the end. I love the fact that like that's a real fucking puppet. And they talked about this in the commentary, how like they have a puppeteer underneath like in a 4-foot like hole in the sand with like some plywood on top of it. And they're just moving the little fucking puppet around next to Kristen Wiig. And it's like, that's movie magic to me. That's like they mentioned the Kermit thing. The Kermit like bike riding, which they have a clip of during their montage of their lives before they supposedly die, just Kermit on the bike. But it just, even like in a silly comedy, you can still have like, oh, an actual practical fucking puppet that talks like Morgan Freeman. And it's just like, oh, you know, I went to jail. I even taught an old lady how to drive.
That is so fucking hilarious. Which is, like, I mean, when the crab starts talking, like, that I'm just like, yes, this is exactly like the like, this is so weird and so crazy. Yes. And then he mentioned, Shawshank and Driving Miss Daisy. And it's so strange. And it's so, like, weird out of nowhere. And that moment where, like, this crab has, like, this, like, moment. I love his, like, well, goodbye, me. Like, it's so great.
Shout out, by the way, that's impressionist Josh Robert Thompson, who is a very accomplished impressionist. I also know as he's the voice of from the Craig Ferguson talk show, which I was a big fan of, and I went to a live taping of when I was in LA. He's the voice of Craig Ferguson's sidekick, which on that show was a steampunk robot skeleton. One of the great talk show characters of all time, I would argue, Jeff Pierce.
Oh God, yeah, that crab. I mean, I'm thinking of other kind of bits like that, right? There's a lot of like sort of small gags like this in this movie. I mentioned Tommy Bahama, which
right. By the way,
also
Andy Garcia not credited in the movie; he's credited as Tommy Bahama as himself.
That's the funniest thing I've like literally heard all day. That's so good.
And you watched Barbara Circuit and Vista Del Mar early.
It's so great. And like when he shows up and like you have that moment, you're like, that's Andy Garcia. Oh my God, that's so weird. And then he's like, he reveals that his name is Tommy Bahama, and like Annie Mamulo's like reaction is priceless in that moment, and just the like amazing like faux spiritual like, nature kind of speech that he's giving, the way he's talking, the way he like picks up a leaf and just like rubs it on her bruise, and what it's like it's so funny, and it's just like amazing like comedic timing on his part, and just this weird scene that is just like completely out of nowhere, and yet like works so well. And also kind of weirdly there you get a bit of that emotion with Barb's character in this, where she like has this moment of realization kind of like, you know, who she kind of has become, her own person, and you know, become more adventurous and whatever. I love that scene. It like always kind of sneaks up on me because I always forget it's coming, but yeah.
It also leads to one of my favorite little bits of editing in the movie when Barb starts to say, "What the fuck?" and then it immediately cuts to Star sneezing.
Yeah.
To complete the k. Which I think also is a big thing we haven't really talked about with this movie, that it's a PG-13. And in the wake of like the Apatow comedies once again, which were very hard R-rated and just threw fucks around willy-nilly, it's kind of charming to go back to a point where people had like a bit of restraint. Like that line I mentioned earlier, but like, "Oh, you've been pleasuring me a lot," was originally, "You've been penetrating me a lot." And they changed it in ADR because it would have gotten them an R. And I think a lot of times, like, using a slightly lesser, like, less offensive, quote-unquote, term makes it funnier to me. Yeah. Like, with pleasure or having the cut for a fuck, there's just, like, a cleverness there that, you know, we say fuck here all the time. We're not nearly that clever. You can just tell that. So it's always more fun to see, like, especially in a comedy, when they kind of have to move around that. Like, even, like, we mentioned the sex scene earlier. Like, the three of them have a threesome where it's just, like, implied, and you just hear stuff about, like, oh, yeah, we rode each other like horses, and all this other shit. It's, like, it's much funnier to kind of have that, like, a bit of imagination with, like, especially these, like, very kind characters describing, like, fucking each other silly is, like, so funny.
That, and, like, when Barb finally finds out about Star and Jamie Dornan, like, the way she sees them like kissing, and then she sees just like their legs like sticking up, which again is like the classic, like, you can't show sex, so just show like legs in, like, you know, in old movies. And like it works so much better as like comedy, I think, in this than showing like actual sex would, or showing like, you know, the thing that a lot of R-rated comedies do, where they have like someone make really exaggerated sex noises, you know, like really exaggerated moaning or whatever. And it's like, yeah, this is funnier. And I think, like, you're right, like the fact that there isn't a lot of like vulgar stuff in this movie, it is showing a lot of like restraint, and it's showing that like, well, you can make comedy through a lot of this stuff we're talking about, just like weird gags, throwaway lines, random crabs that show up, having random cameos like Tommy Bahama and whatever. Like, there's other ways to do this kind of comedy, right? Like the physical stuff, just the editing choices. Like, it's like I'm not trying to say like the Apatow stuff is like lazy, because I like a lot of those movies, but I agree. Like it has inspired a bit of laziness in a lot of studio comedy, which is kind of it sucks because like this is so creative. Again, like there's bits that recur to this movie, but this movie never has bits that get stale. It never has bits that, like, you know, apart from like the Damon Wayans Jr. bit a little bit, like we talked about, but there's just so much fresh ideas here and fresh like creativity for creating bits and stuff like that. I mean, like I want to talk about the book bits, if I may.
Yes,
because
go ahead.
One of my favorite bits is when someone is reading a book that is like just a ridiculous like title or something. There's two bits here where Jamie Dornan and Sharon Fisherman are reading a book, and I'm trying to forget. Do you remember what the title is of either of them? I'm trying to pull it up here, but
I think the Sharon Fisherman one, like when she's reading how to convince somebody that you love them when you really don't, so you can get what you want.
Yeah.
I think it's like by Victor Bubbles or something like that is the name of the author.
Yes. And like that one, and like Jamie Dornan's one is like how to tell if someone you love loves you even though they don't act like it, and just him like reading it. It cuts to him reading it, and then he's like, I get it. It's just it's so funny. And like I tried to read some of the like the reviews on the back of the book, because you can see it like pausing the movie. And I just love one of them that's like, Mr. Bubble's book is full of absolute nonsense and like gobbledygook. I absolutely loved reading it. Or something. It's amazing. Hold on, this is the one Jamie Dornan is reading. How to Know the Person You Love Loves You Even Though They Don't Act Like It Most of the Time, by Vincent Bubbles.
Vincent Bubbles, a very prolific author in the world of Vista Del Mar.
Right, apparently. This is one of the quotes from the back. Mr. Bubbles' tome is full of nothing but fluff and misguided advice, ... And I loved it all! ! Exclamation mark. I love just that bit. I don't know. It just gets to me, and especially Dornan's just reaction of like sincerely being like reading a self-help book, being like, oh yeah, this is I understand now. It's perfect. I love it. And then it does it with Sharon Fisherman, and it's the way that this movie kind of does bits that kind of change a little bit, right? Like it's the same bit, but from her perspective, and with that, like it just, I don't know. I love that. It makes me laugh every single time I think about that, like that specific bit all the time in this movie.
I like those kind of gags because it kind of makes it feel like, oh, despite how disparate all these things feel, they kind of like connects the characters in this interesting way. That's like, oh, they both seek guidance from these very specific books that deal with their very specific problems at the moment. In a way that's like, it's a Simpsons gag. Like The Simpsons, I always think of
exactly.
Like classic, like somebody's reading a very specific book or brochure or whatever that just has a very funny title. We've been mentioning kind of like these fantastical characters that show up and stuff like that. Brian, we haven't mentioned maybe the funniest gag of this whole movie, or at least recurring gag. Trish.
Trish is it's so good.
The way that's introduced on the airplane, when they just talk about, initially, I love the impetus for this is them looking at the oh, it's a free magazine. Oh, I gotta read this interview with Don Cheadle. Perfect mispronunciation of Don Cheadle's name.
Which also, I love that that magazine cover pops up also in the montage where their life flashes before their eyes.
That impetus for like the Trish back and forth is like, I never heard of a famous actress named Trish. I can't believe it. And then they spend the entire fucking plane ride talking about this invented Trish, where it's like, oh, would Trish do this? No, Trish wouldn't do that. Oh, but Trish would do this. Leading up to them getting to Vista Del Mar and in tears talking about, and you know what Trish said to skin cancer? No, I'm going out on my own terms.
That, and I love on the plane where they're like, and what's Trish's favorite movie? And I forget what Star says, or what Barb says, but Star is like, The Ring.
Right.
It's one of those things I love about SNL sometimes, where a bit goes on for like way too long than you think it will go on for. And for me personally, I love that. I think it makes it so much funnier. I love that like the people on the plane around them are clearly like so annoyed by them. One guy's like putting on headphones and like
Yes.
It's great. And then like yeah, like by the time you've forgotten that this is a bit, at the end of the movie, Reba shows up. Trish.
Maybe the perfect cameo.
It is, yeah, perfect. And also just like, you know, we'll talk I guess a little bit more about like the ending specifically, but like the way that she ends the movie where she's like, and then Barb and Star, you know, became friends again or whatever.
Right, and they're
and
like, she's like, well, I hope you all learned something.
Yes.
Stepping outside your comfort zone means that you can maybe take a step back and realize what life's really all about. But then again, I'm just a sea mermaid named Trish.
Yeah, it's so perfect.
Well, especially to like cap off, like you were kind of mentioning earlier, we might as well talk a bit about the ending while we're here. It's like the one big thing we haven't talked about with like the whole seafood festival goes on, and the big action sequence occurs where Barb and Star like take the jet ski out to try and like stop the mosquitoes from destroying everything.
That where they're like, we need the jet ski to da 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 da, and he's like, I need no explanation. I fully trust you. Go ahead.
Yes. And then they go out there, and Sharon Fisherman follows by literally shooting herself out the cannon, reliving her terrible backstory. Only this time, she doesn't end up naked in the middle of a pool on a Disney cruise ship. This time, she ends up in the middle of the ocean fighting Barb and Star. And a big thing with a lot of these SNL movies is, like, you'll have, like, the main star play multiple characters, right? You'll have, like, Austin Powers as an example of that. This is one of the better examples, especially in recent times, of, like, when Barb and Star are fighting Sharon Fisherman, I never see the seam. Like, they use doubles and everything perfectly in the editing of it. So where it's like, yep, Sharon Fisherman is a third character here, and not just the other Kristen Wiig character.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it when I first watched this, that I just didn't recognize that it was Kristen Wiig. Also because she's in, like, 5,000 pounds of makeup, and, like, I love her outfit in this final sequence where she's, like, I don't know, she's dressed like Timothée Chalamet in Dune, you know, like with the hood and the goggles, but like all white, and like the goggles are like blue. It's like such a great like outfit. I love it. But like yeah, like part of like I didn't realize it was Kristen Wiig was like you just can never really tell. Like you said, like you don't see that, like you believe that there are three people here, and it's really really well done, surprisingly.
And apparently that thing you're talking about was a thing with even, like, people on the production staff, like, according to the commentary. The editor of the movie was like, oh, I don't know who you got to play this part, but I'm going to find out. Don't tell me. I'm going to, like, look at it, like, a bit clearly. I think I can spot who it is. And it's like, yeah, it's insane, especially with, like, all the makeup and stuff and the contact lenses. And I love that apparently there was also a thing where, like, that bit where she's on the bed and she's, like, talking, like, on the phone to Jamie Dornan, apparently it was extremely hot that day. Most of the commentaries I'm pretty much saying, like, oh, it was hot, because they shot this actually in Mexico. And they kept talking about, like, it was hot, we had fun, but it was so hot. And she was, like, sitting there in this bed set where the air conditioning had cut off and wasn't working, and she's sitting in, like, all this makeup, and these contact lenses, and this elaborate outfit, and all she said is in character, like, I'm uncomfortable. So let's keep going. On set. And it's like such a like sheer dedication thing for Wiig that she's still able to like really be in that character despite everything. Just trying to get her out of it.
I love that even her like eyelashes are colored like white. Like that's such a detail.
Yes.
Like I noticed this time where I'm like, even like that's the commitment to like this weird bit of like the skin disease she has, that like her eyelashes are painted white too. It's so funny.
And also, we mentioned her backstory, but I love like the little girl playing her like at the doctor's office where she's like, is it serious? Yes, it's very serious. You need to stay out of the sun. And she just has an exasperated like Kathy face, like, oh boy.
Oh my god. Also just the ridiculousness of like her kind of like tragic backstory, that she like, what is it, the shrimp queen was being crowned, and
right?
Then, like, the popular girls like put her on stage and then like change the setting on the cannon or whatever. And I love when she goes back to it and like hears like the announcer guy, and it's like echoing to like show like like thinking of her past. It's just like such a funny like moment when she's like realizing like this year's shrimp queen. It's amazing.
I love the delivery also when Kristen Wiig's talking about her backstory. And she's like, "Father tried to reach me on the stage, but he couldn't just in time. And the blind old man who was the judge ended up crowning me the shrimp queen and put me in the ceremonial canon."
Oh my god.
But we were talking about the ending, I guess. Yeah, with like Yo-Yo comes back in the submarine.
Yeah.
And all the mosquitoes come out. And I love even that like, Barb and Star, like when they go underneath the water, like I love the way that looks visually, where it's not realistic. It isn't like clear, like, oh, they're not like in the middle of like an actual ocean. It's just like that clear blue, and the way that they like communicate with each other through subtitles, and it's never
So
explained.
good. Yes,
They're
exactly.
They're just looking at each other and moving their hands a bit, and it's just like they're communicating, like, well, I guess our lives are flashing before our eyes and everything.
And yeah, this is where we get the montage of like Don Cheadle
And Kermit.
There's like another funny the wheat thins. There's the box of wheat thins.
Box of wheat thins, the hot dog soup thing comes back, and then also the one shot of, like the turtle in the bathtub.
Yes, that's really good. And then like just again, yeah, the silliness and the ridiculousness of like they see like this green glowing light. Again, the movie is like fully in like surreal fantasy. This is absolutely ridiculous mode. And yet also like this montage, which is so funny, also does genuinely have that feeling of like, oh yeah, we have come so far. Remember when we were in like Nebraska, and like the journey that this movie has kind of taken you like does kind of sneak up on you a little bit.
We've come a long way from soft rock, Brian. One other person I want to shout out in terms of like the amongst everybody, that one guy in the Speedo.
He's funny.
Weird background character just shows up, like gives Barb the joint, and then at the very end, if you stay to the very end of the credits, he has a whole little like soliloquy thing where he's like, "Good ships are friendships, and they're made for you and me." It's a very funny like little tag at the end of the movie.
The one other bit I think we should also talk about is the bit with the alligators, where she has them trapped, and like she's like, you can choose how you die, fall off this cliff and hit all these rocks, or the alligators can eat you. Which again, yes, living in Florida is a very common occurrence. I just love. I mean, like this is where we get like just that amazing shot of like the culotte parachute kind of pants, which is just like it's part of that kind of fantasy element of it that is also kind of like it's such a magical like little moment. I think, I don't know why, and I think because they've made so many jokes about the culottes, and because the movie, like, I don't know, like the plot is getting a bit more like it's ramping up, right? Like the stakes are getting higher and stuff like that. But I love that moment for just how kind of like all of the like silly kind of saturated poppy style has like, I don't know, just kind of like really kind of, I don't know, this moment sort of like crystallizes a lot of that. Like it just it's so joyful, I think, to watch like them like parachute down with the pants like so gently. It's I love that moment.
And pay off the culottes definition, which was added very late because they realized like, oh, not a lot of people would know what culottes are. And admittingly, I wasn't aware of what exactly I'd heard culottes before, but I didn't know that was what they were.
Right.
And so a necessary editorial addition.
Yeah, I definitely like seen like what those pants are. I just never knew that they were called culottes. I will say they look really comfortable. Like they look very like comfy.
I know what I'm getting Bryan for his birthday.
But I want like the ones that they have in the movie, like the really like patterned ones, you know, like
right, that also have a parachute function. Yeah, and I'll make sure to get to that.
Oh god.
But I guess before we get to final thoughts, I just really want to shout out the final sort of gag of this movie is with the banana boat thing and paying off the tit flapper, which is such a great innocuous line earlier. Just comes up with like a little bit of they're on the banana boat. It's such a sweet bit where like, Star and Edgar have like finally like confessed their love for each other, or like they were after Sharon Fisherman's out of his life, and it's like, oh, are they gonna live happily ever after? It's like, well, they can, but first Barb and Star have to have their little banana boat adventure. That's what she was saving that for Star, Brian. That's the one thing they were saving for each other, and it's a sweet way to end the movie. Just like they go on that big banana boat, they're having so much fun, and it truly was a tit flapper. as the subtitles say.
Yeah, for one, I love that this movie doesn't end with like, I don't know, Star and Edgar getting married or something like that. Like that's it's implied. Like it's implied that they love each other and they get together. Like that's not, we don't need to see that. We know that, right? I love movies like this, like these kind of comedies that end with a title card like that. Like Walk Hard has maybe the best ending title card of all time, right? With like
Dewey Cox died 3 minutes after this performance.
yeah, and that line where it, like, I don't know, it maybe it is just because, like, again, we associate like these kind of like freeze frame title card kind of things with like more serious movies, but just that bit always kills me. And again, like a thing that this movie is really about from the very beginning is their friendship, and to end with like, yeah, her and Jamie Dornan get together. That's very sweet. That's very good. But this is what we really came here for. This is the real thing that matters in this movie, which is great. I love that.
Brian, one more thing.
Well, I got one more thing. It's bothering me.
Yes.
I just love during this final like the jet ski like chase. That's the second time that they cut back to the book club group or whatever.
Right,
and again, it
steals the tea.
Yes. No. That's the one that comes like, that's the one in the credits, I believe. This is the one where Vanessa Bayer is like, my favorite facial expression goes like this, and then she just does like a forced like smile. It's really great, and it's the thing I love where like a bit just kind of comes back so unexpectedly, where they did this earlier in the movie, but much earlier, and then by this bit, like by the time it reaches this point of the movie, you've forgotten it. And then it just comes up again, and it's absolutely hilarious. And it just that shot of like the room that the book club is in is like so funny to me. Just the framing of it. Yeah, I just love that like random cutaway. But
yeah, Vanessa Bayer, underrated SNL cast member as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Somebody who didn't get nearly as much love, and very consummate professional on SNL, and then she's popped up in a bunch of other things like on I Think You Should Leave, and stuff like that. Just a very talented comedic actress in general. But yeah, Brian, we've been talking for a long time about Barb and Stargate Vista Del Mar. So any final thoughts, final musings, before we leave the sandy beaches of Vista Del Mar?
I guess just some stray like jokes that I had written down here I wanted to talk about. I do love, we mentioned Tommy Bahama, but earlier when they see their friend who tells them to gives them the brochure to go to Vista Del Mar. She mentioned like hot guys that are dressed in like Tommy Bahama head to toe. It's just like they're so impressed by that. They're like, "Oh wow, that's like wow." I think it's Barb who mentions this, where she's like, "Yeah, I had this friend one time who was dating a doctor, but it turns out it was Bruce Springsteen." It's just a random line that just like gets me every single time. I just love that. Oh, this is a really early bit in the movie where Sharon Fisherman is telling how like she got bored, so she started training the mice. And it's, again, a throwaway line you don't think about. And then she's like, the music comes in, and it's a little tiny mice orchestra, which is just such a great little joke there. Those are just a couple of the ones I had like written down. But there's so many bits in this movie that are just amazing and funny, and that like are just like throwaway. Like they put them out there like very casually, and just like, you either you miss them or they just like are like the funniest thing ever, like the Bruce Springsteen one.
There's like stuff like that, or another like Michael Hitchcock. We mentioned him earlier, but like two of the funniest moments from him in the movie are one right after the end of the song when the one guy comes up and starts saying, "We have Tempur-Pedic mattress." No, Jerry, you're late. The song is over.
Yes,
get out of here.
Yeah,
very funny. And then when he catches them at the pool, sneaking in, and it's like, "Oh, sorry, you're gonna throw us in jail." "No, it's fine. We have a vacancy that opened up, and you can have the room if you want." "Oh, that's great." It's like, "Well, it's not really a vacancy. The family that was in there disappeared. It's the husband. It's always the husband."
Yes. God, yeah. And we didn't talk like too deep about it. We did mention it, but I really want to. I love that musical number when they get to the hotel. Yes. Like it does such a perfect job of setting you up for this like this beautiful, again, maximalist, like oversaturated world. I like, as someone who like didn't travel a ton as a kid, like I love hotels, and so anything like this where it's like a resort hotel that I've never been to, like I love just like the vibes and the aesthetic that they have here, and yeah, just all of like the bits with like the chefs and the like the housekeeping like staff when they're like, we change the sheets every day. Well, mostly every day. Like, there's just so much fun stuff there.
Or the one bit of the lady like floating in the pool, and it's like a big Busby Berkeley style thing, and she's like, "I'm getting over my divorce."
Yes. Or like the other one that like gets me is when they're like, they mention like the soul douche, and it goes back to her, and she's like, "Soul douche." It's perfect. I love it. And yeah, I mean, just this movie as a whole is so fun and so like comforting, and like has become one of these movies that, like, especially given how breezy and how short the movie is, like I can just kind of put this on whenever and have a great time with it, and it puts you in such a great mood, and the performances are amazing, and it is like just everything we've been talking about just is so the type of comedy that I love. Just the exaggerated element of it, the ridiculousness of it, but the like full commitment of like, we're treating this like it's real, you know, and we're treating it like it's fucking Broadway or something. And it's kind of like, you know, we talked about like the Muppet movies, like with like Muppet Christmas Carol, and like it's a similar thing here of like just treating this ridiculous thing that is so obviously ridiculous with earnestness. I also just love this movie so much because like I am someone who hates the beach, and I hate the summer, and I hate being outside when it's hot and it sucks. And this movie is kind of like you're saying, like this brochure, this kind of like postcard of a vacation. And I love that. I love when movies can be like these kind of like vacations and be this kind of like virtual tourism kind of thing. This isn't as much like that, but it is this kind of like idealized version of what a vacation is like, while also having a fucking like James Bond side plot with, you know, a henchman that is like this little kid. I love this movie. I know it has this kind of like slight cult following. I think there's a lot of people who have kind of watched this on at home and been like, hey, this is like one of the best comedies of recent years, and I hope it continues to kind of gain that level of attention, you know, because I think, like we talked about, we don't get as many of these movies, and when we get something like this, which is fucking amazing and so funny and is exactly what we want to see, we should highlight it. And it is like this movie absolutely rules. I kind of want to see a sequel, but I also kind of don't want to see a sequel. Like, I like this just being like the one Barb and Star kind of adventure that we get, and it's so much of what I love about like studio comedies and SNL comedies in general. And like, yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, I co-sign a lot of that, especially also being a fellow Florida boy who does not like the beach and the sun. We love it here. Such a great place. But this definitely feels like kind of like the wonderful idealized version of Florida. It reminds me of the better beach vacations I did have with my family growing up, in terms of just like the vibrancy of how everything looks, and how that kind of like the sun-baked kind of charm of it, I think it's something that we don't really get from like a lot of modern comedies, because of what we mentioned, kind of like the lack of visual panache that's in a lot of them and all this other stuff. Like, when I just watched this movie, it also took me back to a lot of like discovering weird movies on like Comedy Central. Like, a big reason why I grew up like loving comedy so much, I would spend so many days during the summer, instead of going outside, watching either Comedy Central or Sci-Fi Channel on like a Saturday afternoon. So I would watch either like a weird, upsetting genre movie or a funny comedy on Comedy Central. And this would feel like the movie I would immediately become obsessed with if I watched it as a kid on Comedy Central.
Yeah.
Because it just feels just so like odd and vibrant and kind of adult, but also PG-13 in the way that like a kid can still just enjoy like the silliness of it. Mm-hmm. It feels definitely like a movie that like anytime I've been around a person who's like, hey, do you know about any like fun silly comedies I could watch? I've been like dying for a fun silly comedy. This is just instantly the one I recommend. Mm-hmm. Because it is, like we mentioned, it has the great mix of absurdist comedy, sincere emotion, incredible visual vibrancy, wonderful comedic performances from, your usual suspects like Kristen Wiig or unusual suspects like Jamie Dornan. It just has, like, so much packed into it. And like you mentioned, like, about 106 minutes of runtime that, like, breezes by so quickly. It's not just one of my favorite comedies of recent years, but just one of my favorite movies of recent years. I fucking love Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar. Such a great, enjoyable, fun ride that, I would say it's a real tit flapper, if I do say so myself, Bryan.
It absolutely is. Oh my god. Like, yeah. And again, just do not want to overemphasize. Jamie Dornan should have won not just an Oscar, he should have won the fucking Nobel Peace Prize for his performance in this movie. I cannot get over that.
At least a Grammy for that
Seagulls
song.
Can you hear 'em? It's that song, like, it's better than any of the best original song nominees of, like, the past few years at all. It's like it's a great song, and, like, part of what is so great about some of these comedies, like Walk Hard, is, like, the songs have to be good if you're gonna have these musicals, and the songs are just fucking bangers.
Yeah, down to the random backup singer that just immediately is in frame with Jamie Dornan singing along with him. Stuff like that. Love it. Yeah, for sure. The seagulls answered our prayers and gave us Spark and Star. Right when we needed it. But let's go ahead and move on to our regular segment, Bryan, Between the Lines. So on every episode of this show, Bryan and I recommend another movie that's, tangentially related to the movie we're talking about, or could be a different alternate choice for, in this case, the N for New for SNL Vehicles. And I'm going first here, and my choice is definitely an N for New in that it did come out within the 2020s. I don't blame you if you've never heard of it, because it was a Peacock exclusive. So not as many eyes on it necessarily, called Please Don't Destroy, The Treasure of Foggy Mountain. Now, this is a movie, as you could tell from the opening bit of that, Please Don't Destroy, you might recognize as the comedy group that is currently writing on SNL. They're a part of, like, the current cast that's going on, that consists of Martin Herlihy, John Higgins, and Ben Marshall. Now, two of those names might sound a bit familiar because John Higgins is the son of Steve Higgins, who was an SNL writer for a long time, and you might recognize as the announcer for The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. And Martin Herlihy is the son of Tim Herlihy, who was a writer on SNL as well, and has gone on to write a lot of, like, Adam Sandler stuff in the last several years. So they're both Nepo babies to a certain degree. But I've watched some of their stuff on SNL, and I think they're quite funny. They write a lot on SNL, but they also do video shorts that are kind of like the successor to The Lonely Island in a lot of ways. They kind of have a similar vibe, like three guys hanging out kind of thing. But they don't at the same time feel like they're stepping on their toes. It just feels kind of like a slightly more like late millennial, early Gen Zer kind of vibe to them as performers. And the three of them made this movie called Treasure of Foggy Mountain, which follows them basically as like three sort of man-children that all work at the same place, which is the store that Ben, who's the redhead, is kind of the Nepo baby of, ironically, because his father runs it. I should mention his father is played by Conan O'Brien in one of his rare acting roles. And he's very disappointed. And then, like, I love the opening montage of them trying to get to work. And it's all done as, like, a playful montage where it's like, oh, let's make some breakfast, everybody. I'm going to throw you the eggs. And the eggs just immediately land on the wall and go down like, ah, shit. Well, I guess we got to get some snow cones on the way to work. And then they try and get in the car. And it's like, oh, no, the car's busted. Let's roller skate over there. And we're going to get our snow cones. And then some kids are going to intimidate us. And we're going to buy them beer. Because they're intimidating us, these small children. And then they, like, roller skate into work, and Conan immediately yells at them, like, why are you guys roller skating in here? You're 3 hours late! And the cops are here and they're saying that you sold beer to minors? It's like, well, they looked very European and the drinking age is a lot lower there. What made them European? I don't know, they had a certain je ne sais quoi about them. So it's like, all that shit is like, this is the first like 4 minutes or so of the movie. And immediately after that, realized, like, you know what, we're down on our luck. My dad hates us, so we might not be working at this job too much longer. There's this legend about, like, oh, in Foggy Mountain there's a treasure, and they found, like, this little, like, amulet that's supposed to lead them there. So it's them going on a bit of a hunt to try and find this thing, which is basically just an excuse for them to, like, have several different gags that pop up throughout. And it feels very much in the spirit of, I would say, Hot Rod in particular, which is to say it's kind of shaggy. It isn't, like, like the most consistently funny comedy, but when it hits, it's really funny, I think. And there's a lot of people that also pop up in here, like Bowen Yang, of course, another current SNLer, Cedric Yarborough of recent Juror Number 2 fame.
Yeah.
The narrator is John Goodman, just talking about, like, why is it so hard to fucking find buried treasure? It's ridiculous. You can't believe it. And also, I want to shout out X Mayo, who is a very funny comedian, who is like one of the park rangers that's trying to like chase after them at a certain point. And she has one of my favorite sort of like breakdowns of these guys, basically, where if you look at the guys, they all look very distinctive. Yeah, so she dresses them down at one point while like looking at a picture of them, where it's like, oh, I guess we're chasing after Reba from Undercover Boss, Danny DeVito with a glow up, and a Tim Burton doodle. Which is so fucking funny to me. There's like, it's a lot of these funny gags. I think it's just a movie that I would want to recommend to a lot more people. If nothing else, for like, seeing Conan as like the exasperated dad is like worth the price of admission.
I want to see that, yeah.
For sure. I mean, it's just, it's him screaming a lot, it's him doing the Conan thing.
Great.
And it just makes me realize, like, I just want more of Conan in fucking movies. Like, we just had the Oscars, you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Wonderful hosting job from Conan. I think one of the better hosts in recent memory. And I just want to see him do more weird projects like this, or in the Weird Al movie where he played Andy Warhol for a bit was very funny. Just Conan's like the perfect spice to add to like a comedy movie like this, I think. And I think, yeah, Please Don't Destroy Treasure Foggy Mountain. A lot of funny bits in there. A lot of like interesting elements. I think proof that, like, you know, I have criticized a lot of modern SNL, like the recent cast. And I don't want to be that guy because, you know, that happens with most people. I've mentioned this before. Anything past their particular cast of SNL when they were like 13, everyone's like, oh, it's not as funny as it used to be. And, you know, Colin Jost aside, I think people, something like the Please Don't Destroy guys, proves that you can have really funny modern SNL kind of comedy, and the Treasure Foggy Mountain movie is a great kind of gateway to that. But I assume you haven't seen this either, because most people haven't, because it's a Peacock exclusive.
Yeah, I remember when this came out, though. Unfortunately, it came out in 2023, which was a hot year for movies. I do want to check it out because I think, well, one, I definitely want to see Conan acting. I love him so much. And yeah, he did a great job at the Oscars, I think. And also, I think, like, for something like this, like, I guess it maybe makes sense to put it on streaming, to put it on the cock, as I constantly say.
Pee all over the cock, yeah.
Yeah. It's becoming so easy for someone like Universal to be like, yeah, let's put it on streaming. I don't know, whatever. But I don't know. Yeah, this seems like the kind of movie that I would like to see in a theater. I grew up kind of with the Lonely Island guys, which put a pin in that. Maybe we'll get back to that. For people on SNL, I like when there is kind of a group like that. It kind of creates this fun dynamic between like the three of them, like the Lonely Island guys. But yeah, I'm also just not familiar with Please Don't Destroy stuff. So I think, yeah, especially considering I'm seeing here it's 92 minutes, so very short. Yeah, I would like to check it out, and I would like, again, to see more of these kinds of movies put into theaters because, like we mentioned earlier, it's just kind of, it's where, you know, these movies play best.
Yeah, and admittedly, I wasn't really familiar with them either before this movie. And this kind of made me a fan of theirs, and I ended up watching a lot of their skits that are on YouTube as well from the SNL stuff. And yeah, I just think they're three funny guys. There's just three funny dudes hanging out together, even though two of them are Nepo babies, which means they shouldn't actually deserve any of the success that they have. So, there's that. But Brian, you have a different movie to recommend.
I do. I do not have a new, by our definition, movie here, but I do have a movie that came out within the past decade. Almost a decade old. That's, God, that is crazy to think about.
Yep.
From 2016, I'm recommending Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. Of course, Lonely Island. This is a movie that did not do well at the box office when it came out, like you hinted at earlier, and has kind of gained this big following, I think, over the past almost decade of it coming out. But it follows Andy Samberg's character, Connor For Real, who is this former boy band with the Lonely Island, kind of like a Beastie Boys type of group, who is now doing his solo thing, and he is just like, obviously by the way the title is kind of hinting at, like a Justin Bieber mid 2010s kind of like arrogant, annoying pop star guy who is like also just really dumb. Just for one, if you want to talk about, we talked about the songs in Barb and Star. The songs in this movie are unfucking believable. I mean, like, Bin Laden, I think about that song all the time. I just like randomly sing it to myself because it is just like so funny and so ridiculous and insane. Mona Lisa, Not Gay, you know, the equal rights song is just like one of the like just most cutting sort of like parodies of like of pop stardom, I think, in like the 2010s. And I think
I'm So Humble, of course, it's a banger.
Of course, just amazing stuff. And like a lot of what this movie is just this like amazing, it's a mockumentary that is an incredible like send up of the music industry and just like the entertainment industry in general. Like, you know, there's an incredible scene where he puts out his new album, Conquest, with 2 N's, and he like looks at the Rolling Stone reviews, and an amazing bit where he's like, Rolling Stone has given it the poop emoji. It's just amazing. There's an amazing...
We'll just say mixed reviews.
Yeah, we'll just say mixed reviews. We'll call them mixed. Amazing cameos from like Questlove, Nas, Ringo Starr, A$AP Rocky. Like, there's just so many amazing...
The A$AP Rocky's Lunchable bit is one of my favorite
yes.
comedy bits.
Yes, same. I like, ever since I saw that one, that's the one that like has always gotten to me. And just like all of them very committed to being like Simon Cowell as well, being like, you know, just all these people being like, oh, I thought he's brilliant, he's a brilliant artist, you know, like Ringo just being like, oh, he's almost as good as the Beatles. Like, just the way that they build this kind of fake pop star for this movie is amazing. And then you have the supporting cast, who also features the 2 Lonely Island guys, Jorma Taccone and Akiva Schaffer. Pretty sure I said that right.
I believe it's Jorma Taccone.
Jorma Taccone. I'm sorry. I mean, like, Tim Meadows, who is maybe one of the best and funniest people on this planet, giving like an amazing performance as like as the manager, part of Tony, and Tony. This is my favorite bits. Maya Rudolph also shows up. I love her bit where she's like this, like they kind of parody the U2 moment where U2's album got put onto everyone's like iTunes, where they put it onto everyone's like appliances. So like the refrigerator just starts playing Connor For Real randomly. It's like, it's such an amazing bit. And you know, just it is a lot of what I think we said about Barb and Star can apply to this. It is a mockumentary, right? So it's not as like vibrant or necessarily or anything, but I think just like the way it uses like music history and just kind of pop music, right, by making like the Style Boys, as the group is called, be this kind of Beastie Boys type of like group, but then have like him be this kind of like, again, Justin Bieber type of pop star. Chris Redd kind of shows up as this kind of like Tyler the Creator, that kind of like chaotic kind of like kind of manic kind of energy. He is really funny. Like,
I'm joking, but maybe I'm not.
Like, nah, I'm just playing. Or am I? It's really amazing. I mean, like, oh God, some of the other cameos, like the seal cameo is like my favorite scene in that entire movie. I love it so much. One of the funniest comedies of the past decade, I would say, and it completely bombed, and like it really sucks because it is just absolutely hilarious. And I think, again, like everything I said about Barb and Star applies to this movie, but like it just from that kind of like pop music entertainment industry kind of angle. Andy Samberg, man, I know, like I grew up kind of at the tail end of his kind of like big moment, kind of like I guess pre Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but like kind of going back, he is fucking hilarious. He is just insanely good. And kind of what we talked about with Barb and Star, like the emotions which this movie kind of gets into a bit of kind of like figuring out who Connor for real is, like it absolutely works. And he walks that fine line of being ridiculous and stupid and looking like an idiot, and also like, you know, full sincerity, and the emotion, when the emotions hit, they matter. This one has kind of gained this kind of like, I don't want to say cult following necessarily, but like a lot of people have kind of been like, oh yeah, that movie, like that's a great comedy. If anyone out there has not seen it, I highly recommend it. If anything, just for the songs, they're amazing. You know, like it's weird because I as much as I didn't grow up watching SNL and watching the Lonely Island guys, I definitely knew like Dick in a Box and I'm in a Boat. Like I knew those songs because they were so like big in like the pop culture landscape. So just talking about this movie I want to rewatch it. You know, it's not even 90 minutes. It's 87 minutes. Very short. Absolutely incredible. Breakneck pace. One of those kind of like Barb and Star. One of those kind of like the joke per minute ratio is like off the charts. You know, like that kind of thing of like there's just a joke constantly. You are laughing the entire movie. And I love that. I love just like those kinds of movies that have that kind of pacing. So yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, but yeah, how do you feel about this movie? Are there any other bits from this that you remember or think about or anything like that?
Well, I think I've talked about previously that like Lonely Island, like that particular period of SNL was like my sweet spot. That was my cast, kind of like Sandberg, and Kristen Wiig was of course a part of that. Also Bill Hader, who pops up in this, in a very funny supporting role. The whole
oh my god,
I like to flatline myself, like Flatliners, that film shot by On the Ball, shit like that. I think I loved Lonely Island a lot, and I really liked Hot Rod when it came out, but I think Popstar is like the masterpiece of like the Lonely Island kind of like theatrical, especially collaborations, like the non sort of like digital short stuff. I just think it's like packed full of like amazing jokes. Like you mentioned, for 86 minutes, there was not like a wasted space for a good joke. And I mean, like, and so many, like that one is one we definitely could have covered because it has like such SNL royalty in there. We mentioned like all the Lonely Island guys, but Tim Meadows as well. Chris Red became an SNL cast member shortly after this movie. But also Maya Rudolph shows up in there, Bill Hader.
Sarah Silverman, right?
Sarah Silverman, right, who was a brief cast member as well. Even, Jimmy Fallon shows up, everyone's favorite SNL cast member. The one bit where, they have, like, everyone being annoyed at him because he says that Jimmy Fallon's shitty is, like, the least believable thing about that silly movie. It's like, no, I would be 100% on his side. Fuck Jimmy Fallon. He's in the right on this. I don't know what you guys are talking about. But yeah, I mean, phenomenal movie, great movie. Definitely one I would recommend to anybody who didn't see it, which is most of you out there. Like I mentioned earlier, I was part of the crowd that did see it in theaters, and it's lonely, empty theaters that no one went to. And I think it's a shame. And I think we should also shout out the fact that both of our movies are produced by somebody who we've been kind of bad-mouthing for most of this particular episode, Judd Apatow.
Yeah.
Two of his productions, kind of like near the tail end of his, like this one definitely was like the tail end of his like big kind of like clout as a producer of comedies. But, it shows that like he can still like with that, or later on with like Foggy Mountain, he still was like trying to, raise up new talents. He maybe just, just shouldn't direct any more movies because The Bubble is one of the worst comedies I've ever seen.
I still have not seen The Bubble.
You're better off for that. Though what was much funnier was his tweet after the Will Smith Oscar incident, where he said,
Thomas,
I mean, what are you guys laughing about this? He could have killed him.
Could have killed him.
So funny.
Insane thing to say.
So fucking funny, Judd. I can't, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through like the credits for Popstar and like the cameos in this movie. The amount of people they were able to get for like these insanely stupid little gags is crazy. Like, I only mentioned some, and I don't want to spoil any more. I've already said enough, but like, it's insane that they were able to get so many of these people for this movie, and it rules. But
one that I really love that I just really want to shout out is like probably the funniest this person has ever been. Mariah Carey talking about the "I'm So Humble" song, where she's like, you know, that really spoke to me because I'm a really humble person.
Yes. Yeah, just like these incredibly famous people being like, "Oh, Connor, for real. When I heard that was when my life changed." Like, I think Questlove is the one who says that. Like, man, that changed everything. And I was like, what is this? Is so stupid. I love it. Oh man.
Yeah. Well, let's repeat our titles for everybody out there in case you want to add them to your watch list. I had the 2023 Peacock exclusive, Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain.
Yes, and I had the 2016 film Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping, directed by two of the Lonely Island members.
On that note, we should finally wrap up this very long episode of this show by saying, thanks to Burial Grid for our music for the show. Purchase this music at burialgrid.com. Thanks to Michelle Kyle for our artwork. Find her at MishKyle96 over on Twitter. And thanks to our supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/cinema2letter, where for just $1 a month, you get access to all sorts of bonus content that we have here, including, some bonus audio stuff. Like, around this time, we would have probably been close to at least releasing our big bonus thing for April, which is going to be our full franchise, all about the Final Destination films. Probably some audio reviews for some recent releases. I'm not sure what we're doing for April yet, Brian, but, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that's, could be coming out around then or into the summer. We're definitely going to be covering some big stuff. And we'll just also tease, we mentioned a lot about the Muppets today. A tease that May marks the 70th anniversary of the Muppets, so you know me. I'm going to force Brian to watch some more Muppet stuff. We haven't decided what exactly we're going to do for that, but we're going to get very Muppety on the Patreon come the start of the summer.
Hell yeah. I mean, I love the Muppets, so I'm here for it.
Goddamn right you do. You wouldn't eat frog legs because you would be upset about Kermit on his bike and how often he used those legs.
What does she have instead? She's like, I'll have the...
Oh, the eagle bites?
Yes,
eagle bites,
the bald eagle.
Right. Which, for the record, I think is very disrespectful to Sam the Eagle as well. Like, you gotta be very,
That's true.
fair for, like, other Muppets, I think. But for more of us elsewhere, for free, you can find us on whatever hell site you're perusing. We're going to be there at Cinema Number 2 Letter, if we are there. And you can find me mostly on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Not The Who's Tommy. And occasionally I'll also do some writing over at film-credit.com. Also wanted to shout out that I was recently a guest on the Films for Breakfast podcast, hosted by Adam Zadorius. I talked with him about the recent release Drop, the Christopher Landon thriller. We had a fun discussion about that. I'll probably have a link in the show notes for it.
Yeah, and you can also follow me on Blue Sky or still Twitter if you want to for some reason. At BRYANDRADE and the number 3. Or if you want to actually follow me for stuff I actually post, you can follow me on Letterboxd, just at my name. So yeah, follow me on that.
And for more of us in audio form, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or other podcasting platforms. If you're listening on Talk Film Society, you want to listen to all the other great shows that are here on the network. And you can also dig into the archives in our Podbean main feed for, the past 9 seasons of this show, and all the old Double Edge Double Bill stuff is all there for you to peruse. And nothing else, if you can't support us on the Patreon, that's cool. Money can be tight for some people. But the free way to help us out is to rate, review, or simply share the show around to give us more visibility. Spread us out all over, like, the fun vibes of Vista Del Mar, with our drinks and our horrible man-eating mosquitoes that are genetically engineered, all this stuff that like we really want to spread around to the people.
Sorry, I just the fact that
Yeah.
the doctor guy is like, we're doing this to kill animals with rabies, right? Right? It's just an amazing bit. Just the mosquitoes are so stupid.
Well, Brian, enough of reciting gags from Barb and Stoker to Vista Del Mar, because we've had too much fun for this particular episode. We've had so much fun about this really funny movie, so we're going to turn the tables as we get to our E for egregious for the season and talk about one chosen by our patrons, our cineast patrons, as we like to call them. They ended up picking Bewitched from 2005 as our bad pick for this particular season. A movie I have seen that is quite baffling, from the late great Nora Ephron. Not one of her finest efforts, but you know, it's a vehicle for Will Ferrell. We'll be talking a lot about Will Ferrell, I'm sure, during that. Also another Nicole Kidman film. Of course, when you think great couples in cinematic history to pair up, Nicole Kidman and Will Ferrell's like right up there, obviously. You haven't seen this one, Brian?
I have not. No. It will be my it won't be my first, but I have not seen a Nora Ephron movie. So I will probably, at the very least, be watching like Sleepless in Seattle and You've Got Mail, which I've heard a lot about, and I'm very excited, and I'm very interested to talk about Will Ferrell specifically, because he is kind of, I guess, the SNL member I have the most exposure to growing up as a child. So, and I have a very kind of complicated relationship with him. So I'm curious to see how that manifests itself in the movie, and it'll just be great to talk about Nicole Kidman. So, you know, yeah, I'm very interested in to do that one.
Yes, that'll be next time. But until then, everybody, Brian and I have to finish this recording so we can get on that banana boat. Come on, Brian, get your life vest on, and we gotta make sure we gotta go out there. We'll see Trish and Morgan Freeman, the crab, all of our buddies out there on the ocean.
Real tit flapper.
We'll have a real tit flapper.